sleep matters. The lie that feels like truth. Imagine you are walking through a fog. It is not thick enough to blind you completely, but just enough to blur the edges of everything you see. You recognize shapes and movements, but cannot be sure of their details. This is the nature of a lie that feels like truth. It does not scream its deception. It whispers just enough accuracy to feel familiar, to feel safe, to feel right. That is the most dangerous kind of lie, the one that sounds like something you already believe. We tend to think of lies as sharp, obvious, or malicious, but the most effective ones are soft. They align with your story. They echo your fears or desires. They reinforce what you want to be true, or what you're afraid already is. A lie that feels like truth does not challenge you. It comforts you, and that comfort makes it powerful. Sometimes the lie is about who you are, that you are not good enough, that others have something you never will, that your past defines your future. These lies do not arrive fully formed. They grow in quiet moments, in setbacks, in childhood echoes, in silent comparisons you make with the lives of others. You may hear these thoughts as your own voice. They are not. They are stitched together from patterns, a comment from a teacher, a parent's tone, a moment when you failed and did not know how to process it. Over time, they harden into beliefs. And once they become beliefs, they are no longer questioned. That is when they begin to control you. You act differently when you believe you are not worthy. You do not try. You lower your standards. You sabotage your own progress before it can prove that the belief was false. This is the feedback loop of false truths. You think it, you act on it. Your action creates results that reflect it, and those results seem to confirm it. To escape this loop, you must learn to pause. You must learn to listen to your thoughts with gentle suspicion. Ask yourself, is this thought helping me grow or keeping me stuck? Is it expanding my view or shrinking it? Does it sound like me, or does it sound like something someone once planted in me? Truth feels different. It may be painful, but it liberates. It opens space for change. It invites action. Lies that feel like truth create stillness that looks like peace but is actually fear. So the next time you hear that familiar whisper telling you something about your limits, about your identity, about what is not possible for someone like you, take a moment to ask, who told me this? And do they know the real me? Because the truth does not need to shout, but it never needs to hide. The mirror that distorts confidence. Picture yourself standing before a mirror, but the reflection is subtly off. Not dramatically warped like a carnival trick, but just enough that you begin to question if something is wrong with your face or your posture. The distortion is slight, but persistent. That is how confidence gets altered by the invisible mirror we carry inside. This mirror is shaped by expectations, by past experiences, by how others have seen you and spoken to you. It shows you a version of yourself that may not be accurate. Maybe it makes you feel smaller. Maybe it makes your flaws feel bigger. Or maybe it creates a false overconfidence that hides the fear beneath. Confidence is not loudness. It is not walking into a room with certainty that everyone will admire you. True confidence is quiet. It is knowing who you are even when the room does not applaud. It is trust in your ability to adapt, to learn, to recover. But the internal mirror often blocks this view. When you have been criticized or judged, even subtly, it leaves fingerprints on the mirror. Over time, those marks change what you see. A single failure magnifies into a story of being incapable. A moment of insecurity blooms into a belief that you are always anxious or awkward. And these beliefs are sticky. They stick because we replay them. We collect memories that confirm them. We look into the mirror again and again until it becomes the only version we recognize. This distorted confidence shapes how we speak, how we walk, how we enter conversations, how we take risks or avoid them. To realign the mirror, you must stop trusting every reflection. Ask not what you see, but what you are projecting. Are you seeing your present self or the shadow of your past? Are you judging yourself through your own lens or through the imagined judgment of others? Confidence grows when we challenge the distortion. Not with force or denial, but with curiosity. Try something new. Speak up when it feels unnatural. Fail and survive it. Each time you do, you clean the mirror a little more. You see yourself more clearly. Not perfect, but whole. Not flawless, but real. You cannot wait for the world to reflect confidence back to you. You must become your own witness, your own believer. Confidence begins when you stop asking the mirror who you are and start showing it. The flattery trap. Imagine someone offers you a golden cup. It looks elegant, it feels valuable, and it is handed to you with a smile. You drink from it, and for a moment, you feel powerful, seen, special. But after a while, you begin to feel thirsty again. And the more you drink, the thirstier you get. That is the nature of the flattery trap. Flattery is not the same as praise. Praise is honest. It reflects what is true. It may uplift, but it also guides. Flattery, however, is sugar with no nutrition. It tells you only what you want to hear. It does not challenge. It does not deepen. It seduces. We fall for it because it speaks to the part of us that craves validation. We want to feel enough. We want to be admired. So when someone flatters us, we lean in. We believe them, not because they are right, but because they are saying what we wish was true. But here's the trap. Once you get used to flattery, your self-worth becomes dependent on it. You start to need others to echo your value instead of knowing it from within. You begin shaping your actions around what will earn approval. You chase compliments instead of growth. And slowly, without noticing, you hand over your identity to others. You become a mirror for their desires. Their approval becomes your reward, and their silence becomes your fear. To escape the flattery trap, you must first become willing to hear the truth, even when it stings, even when it does not flatter. Surround yourself with people who will not only admire your strengths, but also challenge your blind spots. Value the friend who corrects you more than the one who only praises you. Then, turn inward. Ask yourself, why do I need their words to feel good? What part of me is still unsure of my own value? Flattery is a symptom. The real work is self-trust. When you know who you are, you can enjoy a compliment without becoming addicted to it. You can feel gratitude without dependence. You will begin to notice the difference. Praise feels nourishing. Flattery feels addictive. One gives you strength. The other keeps you reaching for more. The world is full of people offering golden cups. Just be sure you are not drinking to forget your own worth. The guilt switch technique. Picture a light switch. Small, silent, easy to flip. Now imagine someone else has access to this switch, and every time they want to influence you, they flip it on. The room floods with guilt. Not enough to overwhelm you, but just enough to change how you feel, what you say, and what you do. This is the guilt switch technique. It is subtle, but it is powerful. Guilt, when genuine, helps us stay accountable. It reminds us when we have wronged someone or broken a promise. It nudges us toward repair. But the guilt switch technique hijacks that feeling. It uses it as a lever to control you. People who master this technique know exactly how to phrase things. They may sigh just enough to trigger your sense of responsibility. They may use silence to make you feel like you've let them down. They may twist past events to make you question your actions. You start second-guessing yourself. Was I being selfish? Should I have said yes? Am I a bad person for wanting something different? And the worst part is, you don't notice the switch being flipped. It blends into the background. You begin adjusting your choices to avoid that flood of guilt. You say yes to things you don't want. You apologize when you did nothing wrong. You walk on eggshells. Over time, your boundaries fade. Not because someone took them from you, but because guilt slowly wore them down. And once that guilt switch becomes automatic, you begin flipping it on yourself. You anticipate their disappointment before they even speak. You try to pre-please. You shrink your needs so no one feels burdened. To break free from this, you need to learn the difference between guilt and responsibility. Guilt says, I am bad for doing this. Responsibility says, I made this choice and I will own the consequences. One chains you, the other empowers you. Next time you feel guilt rising, pause. Ask yourself, did I truly do something wrong, or do I just feel uncomfortable because someone else is upset? Their emotions are valid, but they are not always your burden to carry. You are allowed to disappoint someone if staying true to yourself requires it. Practice noticing the moments the guilt switch gets flipped. Stay grounded. Choose from clarity, not pressure. The more you become aware of this pattern, the harder it becomes for others to use it on you. That switch may still exist, but it will no longer control your light. The manipulator's smile. Imagine someone walking into a room with the warmest smile. Their eyes seem kind. Their posture is relaxed. They make you feel like you matter. But beneath that smile, something else is at play. A script, a plan, a motive that is not always in your best interest. This is the manipulator's smile. It is not just a facial expression. It is a strategy. We are wired to trust warm expressions. Smiles signal safety, connection, acceptance. That is why the manipulator's smile is so effective. It disarms your defenses. It makes you drop your guard before the real game begins. These individuals know how to mirror your emotions. They listen just enough to make you feel heard. They agree just enough to make you feel understood. But their actions serve a hidden agenda. They may want your loyalty, your resources, your silence, your obedience. And they often get it not by force, but by charm. This smile is not about joy. It is about influence. When they speak, their tone is light, sometimes playful. But every word is measured, every compliment is calculated. You start trusting their judgment over your own. You start seeking their approval before making decisions. And the scariest part is, they never have to raise their voice. They never have to threaten you. Their power comes from subtlety, from being liked, from being trusted. But over time, the pattern begins to show. You notice how your boundaries slowly shift. You remember times when you said yes, just to keep the peace. You realize how often you ignored your gut because their smile made you feel safe. That is when the spell starts to break. To protect yourself, you must stop judging intentions by expressions. Watch the consistency between someone's words and their behavior. Does their smile match their follow-through? Do they respect your no? Can they handle disagreement without withdrawing affection? Learn to trust your internal signals more than external warmth. Your nervous system picks up on small cues. Listen to it. Discomfort is information. If someone always makes you feel guilty after saying no, or always praises you before asking a favor, pause, reflect, step back. You can still be kind, still be open, but keep your clarity. Not every smile means safety, and not every warm voice carries a warm heart. You deserve relationships built on respect, not charm. Let smiles be invitations, not contracts. The praise-poison loop. Imagine a child who only feels seen when they bring home a trophy. They start associating praise with worth. Every kind word becomes a form of currency. If they are not praised, they feel invisible. They feel lost. This is how the praise-poison loop begins. And most of us are still stuck in it. Praise, when balanced, can encourage growth. It can reflect appreciation. But when it becomes a tool for validation, it turns into poison. Slowly, silently. You start chasing it. You start performing for it. You begin measuring your value through the lens of others' approval. It starts innocently. Someone says, "You are smart." You work harder to maintain that image. Someone calls you strong. You start hiding your tears. Someone admires your discipline. You stop resting, fearing they will think less of you if you slow down. And suddenly, you are not living for yourself anymore. You are living for their praise. You smile when you are tired. You help when you are drained. You push through pain because the applause makes the exhaustion feel worth it. Until it doesn't. This is the poison. Praise that becomes your fuel leaves you empty when it disappears. You start fearing silence. You feel anxious when no one notices your efforts. You work twice as hard not because you love what you do, but because you are terrified of not being seen. To break this loop, you must begin by asking a difficult question. Who am I when no one is watching? Would I still choose this path if no one clapped? Would I still speak this truth if no one praised me for being brave? It is not easy. Praise feels good. But real strength comes when you can do something good and not need anyone to notice. When you can feel proud of yourself without needing someone else to validate it. Begin small. Start appreciating yourself privately. Write down what you are proud of each day, not for others to see, but for yourself to remember. Notice what actions drain you and which ones light you up. Choose more of the latter. Praise can still be a gift, but let it be the echo, not the goal. Let your work, your kindness, your voice exist for something deeper than applause. That is where your real freedom lives. In doing the right thing, not because it will be praised, but because it matters, because it is true, because it is you. The power of delayed validation. Imagine being applauded for something you have not yet done. The praise comes early, the appreciation feels good, and the mind begins to relax into it. Now imagine a world where that applause never comes when expected. Instead, it lingers in the distance, waiting. That is the space where something unusual happens. That is where the power of delayed validation begins to take hold. Delayed validation is not about denial. It is not about withholding appreciation. It is about understanding the timing of reinforcement and how deeply it affects the human psyche. In most cases, we crave immediate feedback. A compliment right after a good deed. A like right after a post. A thank you right after a favor. These moments of recognition become small doses of dopamine that keep us returning for more. But what if those doses were held back? When you do something kind or exceptional and nobody notices it right away, your mind starts to question. Was it worth it? Did it even matter? The silence is uncomfortable, and that is where the transformation begins. Because in that silence, a strange independence starts to grow. You begin to separate your action from the reward. You begin to act not for the approval, but for the alignment with your own values. Delayed validation teaches you to move without applause, to build without being seen, and to continue even when no one acknowledges your effort. This rewires the internal narrative. Instead of being driven by outcome, you become rooted in process. Instead of chasing the praise, you begin chasing precision, depth, and mastery. There is a hidden strength in not being seen right away. It forces you to find purpose that lives deeper than performance. It makes you immune to flattery and resilient against criticism. When you know that validation may never arrive or might arrive years later, the grip of external approval weakens. This is why the most powerful creators, thinkers, and doers often spent years in obscurity. They were not waiting to be noticed. They were refining their craft, building their vision, living inside a reality that was not shaped by likes or comments or shares. Their reward system was internal, and that made their growth unshakable. There is a quiet kind of discipline that grows when validation is delayed. A kind that cannot be taught through praise. It has to be experienced through the hunger of being overlooked. Through the moments where you wonder if it is worth continuing, and then you do it anyway. That is when something unbreakable is born. When validation finally comes, it is no longer needed. You receive it, yes, but you do not depend on it, because you have already been forged in the fire of silence. You have already learned to move without a map and to believe without applause. And That makes you free. The yes that controls you. Picture this. You are in a conversation and someone asks you for a small favor. You do not really have the time, but you say yes anyway. Later, another request comes. This one is even more demanding. But again, you nod. You agree. You comply. By the end of the week, your time, your energy, your mental peace all belong to someone else. And it all started with a simple yes. The word yes is powerful. It opens doors, creates connection, and builds trust. But when used without awareness, it can become a leash, a quiet agreement that pulls you away from your own priorities. A yes that is not rooted in truth is not a gift. It is a surrender. Most people do not realize how often they say yes out of habit, out of fear of disappointing others, out of anxiety about conflict, out of the need to be liked. And slowly, this automatic yes begins to reshape your life. Your calendar fills with things you did not choose. Your days are scattered with obligations you do not care about. And your mind is burdened with a quiet resentment that grows each time you agree to something you do not mean. There is a hidden cost to being agreeable, especially when that agreement is not conscious. It steals your focus, it fragments your attention, and it makes your time feel like it belongs to everyone but you. Over time, you forget what you actually want, because your yes has become your identity. Saying yes should not be reflexive. It should be intentional. It should come from clarity, not guilt, from alignment, not pressure. When you begin to say no with care, something surprising happens. You start to reclaim yourself, not in a harsh or selfish way, but in a grounded and respectful way. Every yes you give should carry the weight of awareness. It should be a choice made with full presence. Because every yes is a step. And if you take too many steps in directions that are not yours, you will wake up in a life that feels foreign. There is nothing wrong with helping others, with being kind, with being available, but it must come from a place of strength, not sacrifice, from a desire to serve, not a need to please. A powerful yes is one that respects your boundaries. It comes from a whole heart, not a divided one. Learning to pause before you answer. Learning to check in with your values. Learning to sit with the discomfort of saying no. These are all small but vital practices that free you from the trap of unconscious agreement. Because when your yes is no longer automatic, your time becomes sacred. And when your time becomes sacred, so does your energy. So does your life. The yes that once controlled you becomes the yes that empowers you. The trick of predictable emotion. Imagine being watched, not by a person, but by a pattern. Every time you react in a certain way, the pattern takes note. It learns your habits, your triggers, your defaults, and slowly, without ever realizing it, your emotions become predictable. And because they are predictable, they become programmable. This is the trick of predictable emotion. When your reactions are known, they can be controlled, not always by others, but often by circumstance. If the world knows that a certain tone will make you angry, it will keep using that tone. If a delay always makes you anxious, you will keep meeting delays. Because predictable emotion is easy to manipulate. This manipulation does not have to be malicious. It can be accidental. Systems, people, environments begin to shape themselves around your emotional reflexes. You become the person who always gets frustrated in traffic, the one who gets flustered when plans change, the one who shuts down when criticized. These labels start to write your story. But what if you could interrupt the script? What if you could become less predictable? Not cold, not emotionless, but calm, aware, and fluid. Emotion is not the enemy. Reactivity is. The inability to pause, to observe, to choose. That is what makes you easy to read, easy to steer. True power begins when you notice the moment before the reaction. That tiny pause between stimulus and response. In that space lives all your freedom. You are not your emotion. You are the witness to it. And the moment you remember that, the grip loosens. Predictable emotion is the result of unexamined patterns. It is what happens when life becomes a loop and your mind becomes a participant rather than a director. But with awareness, the loop breaks. The trigger becomes a teacher. The reaction becomes a choice. Emotional self-mastery is not about suppression. It is about spaciousness. The ability to feel deeply without being driven blindly. The ability to express without exploding. To respond without losing yourself. When you are unpredictable emotionally, you become stable mentally. Because your center is no longer at the mercy of the world, you become harder to shake, harder to read, and much harder to control. This is not detachment, it is sovereignty. The moment you realize your emotions do not have to dictate your behavior is the moment you begin to own your reality. You stop being a puppet to patterns. You become a sculptor of response. And in that sculpting, in that soft but firm awareness, the trick loses its power. Because what was once predictable becomes peaceful, and what was once emotional chaos becomes emotional clarity. The scarcity brain hack. Imagine someone hands you two pieces of chocolate. One is wrapped in shiny silver foil, the other in plain paper. They tell you the plain one is common, but the silver one is rare, and only a few people ever get to taste it. Even if you have never liked chocolate much, your mind starts leaning toward the silver one. That is how quickly scarcity changes your choices, not because of the item's value, but because of the story around it. This is the scarcity brain hack, and it works on almost everyone. Scarcity triggers a very ancient part of our mind. It whispers that something rare must be important, that something limited must be urgent. This bias was once useful. In a world of real survival, the rarest food, shelter, or opportunity often meant the difference between safety and suffering. But in today's world, where scarcity is often artificial and used for manipulation, this instinct becomes a tool others use against us. You may notice it in marketing. Only 3 seats left. Offer ends tonight. Almost gone. These words do not change the product, but they change the urgency. They hack your decision-making. They create a false sense of pressure. You are no longer thinking clearly. You are reacting to fear. Not fear of missing out on value, but fear of missing out on something others might get. But it is not just about shopping. It shows up in relationships too. Someone pulls away, and suddenly they seem more desirable. A friend becomes distant, and you start wondering if you did something wrong. Scarcity can make us chase things that were never truly good for us, just because they became hard to reach. When scarcity takes over your mind, your imagination fills in the blanks. You assume what is limited must be better. You start fantasizing about the thing or person that is not available. You give it more weight, more value, more attention. And slowly, you stop seeing clearly. You stop evaluating based on your needs or values. You simply want the thing because you are told you might not get it. To escape the scarcity brain hack, you must slow down your reactions. When you feel urgency rising, pause and ask yourself, would I still want this if it were always available? Is the pressure coming from the thing itself or from the way it is being presented? Am I choosing from clarity or from fear? You can also create space by naming the feeling. Say to yourself, I feel pulled toward this because it feels scarce, not because I truly need it. That moment of honesty can cut through the fog. It reminds you that your mind is not always rational when scarcity is involved. True value does not require panic. Real connection does not vanish when it is not chased. Scarcity may be powerful, but awareness is stronger. When you become conscious of the trick, it loses its grip. You can still appreciate rare things, but you will no longer feel controlled by them. You will move from reacting to choosing, from chasing to discerning. That is where your power returns. The compliance trigger. Picture a crowded elevator. A person walks in, and instead of facing the door like everyone else, they turn around and stare at the back wall. Slowly, others begin to turn too. Not because they know why, not because they were told to, but because their brain picked up on a subtle cue that said, "Follow." This is the compliance trigger. It does not shout, it nudges. And often, you are already moving before you realize you have been pushed. Humans are social creatures. Our survival once depended on staying in sync with the group. That instinct is still strong. We tend to mirror behaviors, follow rules without questioning, agree when we feel unsure. This makes us predictable. It makes us easy to guide. And that is what the compliance trigger exploits. It shows up when someone uses authority, a uniform, a confident tone, a clipboard. These signals trigger obedience, even without logic, even without reason. People tend to say yes more often when asked by someone who appears to be in charge. That is why scammers often pretend to be officials. That is why marketers use titles like expert or specialist. It is not the words, it is the reaction they create. But it is not just authority that activates compliance. It is also peer pressure, social proof. The idea that everyone else is doing it, so maybe I should too. You see a long line outside a restaurant and suddenly assume the food must be good. You read hundreds of positive reviews and feel more comfortable making a choice. Even if none of it is real, the effect is. The compliance trigger can also be internal. You may obey your own habits without questioning them, always checking your phone when it pings, always saying yes to avoid conflict, always pushing yourself even when you are tired. These patterns are not always conscious, but they guide your actions. To break this cycle, you must begin noticing the gap between stimulus and response. That brief moment between being asked and answering, between seeing and reacting. That is where your freedom lives. If you can stretch that space even slightly, you can ask better questions. Do I really want this? Is this true? Is this kind? Does this serve me? You can also practice saying no in low-stakes situations. Decline something small, just to feel the power of choice again. Break your routine on purpose. Challenge a common belief gently. These small acts of resistance build your awareness. They remind you that you are not a robot. You are not programmed. You can choose. Compliance is not always bad. It helps us function. But unconscious compliance leaves you vulnerable to manipulation, to regret, to forgetting your own voice. The goal is not to become defiant. It is to become awake, to notice when the trigger is pulled, to pause before reacting, to stay rooted in your intention, even when the world nudges you to follow. That is how you move from being shaped by your environment to shaping it. That is the quiet revolution of awareness. The illusion of choice. Picture this. You walk into a coffee shop. On the board are 10 different drinks. You look at all of them and feel a sense of power. You are the customer. You are in control. You can pick anything you want. But what if, out of those 10 drinks, 9 are just slight variations of the same basic flavor? And what if the true variety you might have wanted was never even on the board? This is the illusion of choice. It is the comforting lie that tells you freedom exists in selection. But real freedom does not live in how many options you are given. It lives in who creates those options and why. When you are given choices within a frame that someone else has built, you are not making decisions. You are selecting within someone else's plan. Think about how often this happens in your life, from the brands you wear to the news you consume, from the jobs you apply to the routines you follow. You feel like you are choosing, but often you are just moving between lanes that were already paved for you, lanes that keep you on a predictable path. The illusion becomes even stronger when it is dressed up in complexity. Endless menus, countless streaming shows, infinite scroll feeds. The more options there are, the more convinced you become that you are in charge. But this endless buffet often leads to paralysis, not freedom. The mind gets overwhelmed. And when it is overwhelmed, it defaults to familiarity. You choose what you know. You repeat what feels safe. And the system wins again. True choice is not about having many doors. It is about having the clarity to know whether the building is even one you want to be in. It is about stepping back from the list of options and asking, who made this list? What do they want me to pick? And why do I feel like I have to choose at all? Most systems thrive on the illusion of choice because it gives people a sense of control without actually giving them power. It pacifies the need for agency while preserving the structure of control. When you think you are choosing, you are less likely to rebel, less likely to question, less likely to walk away from the board entirely. To break this illusion, you have to become aware of the frame. You have to see the edges of the box you are operating inside. And once you see it, you must be willing to ask different questions. Not what should I choose, but why am I choosing? Not what do I want most, but what do I actually need? Not what is available, but what is missing. Freedom begins when you stop assuming the menu in front of you is the only one that exists. When you begin to design your own options, when you realize that no choice can be truly free unless it comes from a mind that is free first. The illusion of choice is comfortable, it is easy, it is seductive, but it keeps you looping in a world that was never truly yours. And once you recognize it, once you feel the quiet click of awareness settle in, you can start to move differently. You can begin to choose from a deeper place, a place untouched by manipulation, a place rooted in your own clarity. Because real choice is not loud, it is not dramatic, it is quiet and firm. It is a whisper from your inner world that says, I see the game, and I choose to step out. The obedience reflex. Imagine a young child in a classroom. The teacher says, sit down, and the child sits. The teacher says, speak now, and the child speaks. The rules are clear. The rewards are simple. Obedience is praised. Defiance is punished. And so, the child learns. Again and again, through repetition and reaction, the mind is wired to follow. Now fast forward. That child grows up. The teacher is gone, but the voice remains. It hides in new places, in the workplace, in relationships, in systems. But it still whispers the same message. Sit when told. Speak when allowed. Follow without question. And so, obedience becomes a reflex. The obedience reflex is not about being good or bad. It is about being trained. Trained to submit to authority. Trained to accept rules without understanding them. Trained to move in a straight line even when the path feels wrong. This reflex is subtle. It does not always look like submission. Sometimes it looks like agreement, like silence, like politeness, like keeping the peace. And because it is so deeply ingrained, most people do not notice it. They mistake it for respect, for discipline, for maturity. But deep down, there is a difference. Respect is a choice. Obedience is a habit. Respect considers. Obedience reacts. One is mindful, the other is mechanical. The danger of the obedience reflex is that it disconnects you from your own judgment. You stop asking why. You stop thinking critically. You stop trusting your own sense of right and wrong. And when enough people move like this, entire societies can sleepwalk into harmful systems, into blind loyalty, into silence in the face of wrongness. History has shown us how dangerous this can be. Ordinary people following harmful orders, not because they are evil, but because they were trained to obey. They believe the one in charge must be right, that the rule must be followed, that their own voice was less important. To undo the obedience reflex, you have to learn to pause, to notice the moment before you say yes, to feel the tug of habit and choose awareness instead. This does not mean rebellion for the sake of rebellion. It means thinking for yourself. It means giving yourself permission to question, to challenge, to disagree. Obedience is not always wrong. There are times when it is useful, necessary, even noble. But it must be conscious. You must know why you are following. You must know what you are agreeing to. And most importantly, you must know that you have a choice. Breaking the reflex is not about being loud. It is about being awake. It is about noticing when your actions are coming from fear rather than understanding, when your yes is automatic, when your silence is easier than truth. The mind trained in obedience often fears chaos. It believes that without rules, everything will fall apart. But real order does not come from blind following. It comes from shared understanding, from mutual respect, from clarity. The moment you begin to question the source of the instruction, you reclaim your mind. You begin to rebuild your ability to think, to feel, to act from a place of inner alignment. You are no longer just a product of authority. You become a participant in your own life. The obedience reflex will always offer comfort. It will always offer certainty. But comfort without consciousness is a cage, and certainty without questioning is a trap. To live fully, to live truthfully, you must risk discomfort. You must risk uncertainty. You must be willing to listen to the quiet voice inside that says, maybe there is another way. And when you follow that voice, you do not just disobey the command. You break the spell. The spotlight bias effect. Imagine walking into a crowded room wearing a shirt you are suddenly unsure about. Maybe the color feels too bright, or the fit feels awkward. As you take each step, your mind tells you that everyone is noticing. Every glance feels like judgment. Every whisper feels like it could be about you. You try to act normal, but the thought keeps circling back. What are they thinking? Are they laughing? Do I look strange? This is the spotlight bias effect. The false belief that people are paying more attention to us than they actually are. It is the illusion that a spotlight is constantly following us, highlighting every mistake, every flaw, every awkward moment. In reality, most people are too focused on themselves to notice even half of what we worry about. The brain is naturally self-centered in its processing, not in a selfish way, but in a survival way. It uses your own experiences as the center of the story, so everything that happens seems bigger to you than it is to others. You remember what you said wrong. You feel the flush of embarrassment. You imagine the room replaying your stumble over and over, but most people forget it within moments, if they even noticed at all. The spotlight bias shows up in public speaking. You freeze before stepping on stage, convinced the audience will catch every nervous blink or pause. It shows up in social media, where you spend hours editing a caption because you are sure everyone will dissect it. It shows up in daily conversations when you overanalyze a comment long after the other person has moved on. What makes the spotlight bias so tricky is how real it feels. Your body responds with real tension. Your thoughts race. Your confidence shrinks. And as that internal pressure builds, it becomes harder to be natural. You start monitoring yourself instead of connecting. You become an actor watching your own performance instead of living the moment. To soften the grip of this bias, start by remembering this truth. People are thinking about you far less than you imagine. Most are too absorbed in their own worries. Their own inner spotlight is blinding them to yours. You are not on stage. You are in a crowd of others trying to feel okay too. There is freedom in that realization. When you stop assuming constant attention, you begin to move more freely. You speak more honestly. You laugh without checking if someone noticed. You dress in what feels good instead of what feels safe. You live. One way to loosen the spotlight bias is to shift the spotlight. Instead of focusing on how you are being perceived, focus on being present. Ask questions in a conversation. Observe the room instead of scanning it for signs of judgment. Notice the details of where you are, not just how you feel. Practice self-kindness when the bias flares up. If you say something awkward, pause and smile at yourself. Remind yourself that one sentence does not define you. That moment is not the whole story. Let it pass like a cloud, not become a storm. You can also look back on times when you worried deeply about how you looked or sounded. Ask yourself honestly, did anyone actually care? Did it change anything? Most likely, the answer is no. That reflection can help you next time the spotlight feels hot. You will remember that the heat is coming from inside, not from the outside gaze. With time, the spotlight dims, the stage disappears. You realize you were never being watched as closely as you feared, and in that quiet truth, you find peace. You stop performing and start being. That is the power of seeing through the illusion of the spotlight bias. You do not need to hide anymore. You are free to be real. The authority shield. Imagine you walk into a room filled with people in crisp uniforms and polished shoes. There is a silence that commands attention. A man stands at the center, wearing no badge, but speaking with the certainty of someone who belongs. Without question, everyone begins to follow his instructions. Not because they truly understand him, not because they necessarily agree with him, but simply because he sounds like someone who must be right. This is the quiet power of what we call the authority shield. We live in a world where appearances and titles often override truth. A white coat, a uniform, a nameplate, a deep voice, or even just a certain confidence in how words are delivered, all of these become armor. Not for protection, but for influence. When someone wears the authority shield, their words bypass our usual filters. We stop thinking critically and start accepting. We nod. We obey. We assume they know more than us. It begins early in life. As children, we are taught to listen to parents, to teachers, to anyone older. This is meant to keep us safe. But as we grow, the world doesn't remind us to question authority. Instead, it often punishes those who do. So we develop a reflex. If someone seems like they know better, we hand over our decision-making without resistance. Picture this. A doctor tells a patient a treatment plan. The patient has doubts, but says nothing. After all, the doctor has the degree, the tools, and the language. Or consider a boss giving an unreasonable order. Employees may disagree, but they comply. Not out of agreement, but because the boss sits higher in the structure. This is not about right or wrong. It is about perceived power. The authority shield works best when we are unsure. When we lack confidence in our own understanding, we are most likely to lean on someone who seems certain. That certainty becomes their weapon, and our hesitation becomes the doorway they enter through. Even in situations where the facts are available, the presence of authority can cause people to doubt their own senses. One of the strangest examples of this comes from psychological studies. In one experiment, participants were asked to give electric shocks to another person when prompted by an experimenter in a lab coat. The shocks weren't real. But the participants didn't know that. Many of them continued delivering higher and higher voltages, even as the person being shocked begged for them to stop. Why? Because the man in the coat said it was necessary. They felt uneasy. Some even protested, but they still obeyed. The man in the coat did not raise his voice. He did not threaten them. He simply gave instructions with confidence. The participants gave up their moral compass in the presence of perceived expertise. This is the darkness of the authority shield. It hides not only the flaws of the one who wears it, but also the instincts of those who follow. The authority shield also appears in daily life in subtler ways. A social media influencer promoting a product. A financial advisor speaking with strong numbers and graphs. A political figure making declarations with carefully controlled tone. When they speak, they do not just give information. They use their tone, their posture, and their reputation to blur the line between fact and persuasion. This is not always malicious. Many who wear the authority shield do not realize its power. They simply speak as they were trained, but the effect remains. Authority simplifies complexity. It removes doubt, and that can be dangerous. Not because clarity is bad, but because false clarity can be more harmful than open confusion. When someone with authority is wrong, their errors spread like wildfire. Because they are believed faster, they are questioned less. People take shortcuts in thought, assuming that if someone important said it, it must be true. But truth is not democratic. It does not bow to rank, and wisdom does not always wear a suit. So how do we protect ourselves? The answer is not rebellion, but awareness. Pause when someone speaks with force. Ask yourself, am I convinced by their evidence or by their image? Are they guiding me with insight or pushing me with tone? The authority shield can only work if we forget to think for ourselves. The moment we wake up to its influence, we begin to see clearly again. Trust must be earned, not gifted. It should be tested, not assumed. A confident voice should never silence your inner voice. And no badge, title, or certificate can replace your responsibility to ask questions. In the end, the authority shield is not just a social tool. It is a psychological mirage. It promises safety and obedience, but sometimes leads us away from truth. Respecting authority does not mean surrendering your mind. It means listening deeply, but thinking independently. The man in the center of the room may speak with confidence, but confidence is not always correctness, and uniforms do not always hide intentions. The real power lies not in following, but in understanding. Not in bowing, but in questioning. The authority shield loses its magic the moment you remember that you, too, have the right to ask why. The agreement hook. Imagine having a conversation with someone who nods at all the right moments. They smile when you speak, they echo your thoughts, and they seem to understand you perfectly. You feel relaxed. You feel seen. You feel like they are on your side. Then, without even noticing, you begin to agree with them more easily. You feel less defensive. You become more open to their ideas, even if you would normally question them. This is the agreement hook. It works quietly, not by changing your mind directly, but by creating the feeling that you already agree. The agreement hook is a psychological technique built on a very old truth about human nature. We are more likely to listen to people who seem to agree with us. When someone mirrors our language or beliefs, our defenses drop, our brain feels safe. That safety becomes trust, and that trust becomes influence. People use this in many ways. A salesperson might start by saying something simple that you already agree with. Something like, everyone wants to save money, or no one likes wasting time. These are universal truths. You nod, you agree. And then they take the next step, offering you a product or service that, in your softened state, you are more likely to accept. But it is not just sales. The agreement hook shows up in politics, in social media, in personal relationships. It shows up in debates, when someone starts by validating your concerns before slowly shifting the conversation toward their opinion. It shows up in arguments, when someone says, I get where you are coming from, but, and then offers a new viewpoint. That initial agreement makes the rest easier to swallow. What makes the agreement hook powerful is not just the words, it is the rhythm of the interaction, the timing, the way it builds comfort before introducing conflict. When used with care, it can create bridges. It can help people feel heard, but when used to manipulate, it becomes a trap. It can lead you to agree with things you never meant to accept. It can pull you into beliefs that are not your own. Sometimes, you do not even notice it. You just feel drawn to a speaker, or a group, or a post. You feel like they get it. You keep listening. You keep watching. And without realizing, your own views start shifting. Not because of facts, not because of logic, but because of the soft pull of agreement. To guard against this, you need to become more aware of the emotional patterns in conversations. Ask yourself, am I agreeing because I truly believe this, or because I feel comfortable right now? Is this idea aligned with my values, or just delivered in a friendly way? Am I thinking critically or just responding to how the message made me feel? Awareness is the first shield. The second is slowing down. When someone presents an idea that feels instantly agreeable, pause. Sit with it. You do not need to react right away. Give yourself space to think. Reflect on whether this agreement is coming from logic or from the desire to stay connected. You can also practice being comfortable with mild disagreement. You do not have to reject others harshly, but you can gently say, I see your point, but I think differently. This keeps your identity intact. It reminds your brain that disagreement is not dangerous. It is not a threat. It is simply a signal of independent thinking. When you understand the agreement hook, you can use it ethically too. You can connect with others by meeting them where they are. You can build trust through shared understanding. But always return to truth. Use agreement as a doorway, not a disguise. The world is full of messages crafted to pull you in. But not every nod needs to become a yes. Not every smile needs to lead to surrender. You have the right to agree, and you also have the right to step back, to question, to say, I need to think about this. That is not weakness. That is wisdom. In a world that thrives on quick clicks and faster responses, the strength to pause becomes rare and valuable. It allows you to see the hooks before they catch, to walk freely without being led, to speak your truth without needing everyone to nod back. That is the quiet strength of clarity. And once you feel it, no hook can hold you. The empathy exploit. Imagine you see someone sitting on the sidewalk with their head bowed, a torn sign resting on their lap. It says something about being hungry and needing help. You feel something move inside you, a quiet pull. Not from logic, not from duty, but from something softer, something human. That is empathy, the ability to feel someone else's feelings as if they were your own, a beautiful thing. But like all beautiful things, it can be bent, it can be used, and when it is, it becomes something else. It becomes the empathy exploit. Empathy is one of the most powerful emotional forces in the human mind. It connects people, drives compassion, and inspires acts of kindness even between strangers. But when empathy is unguarded, it becomes a gateway, a direct tunnel into your thoughts, decisions, and behaviors. And some people, knowingly or unknowingly, learn to walk that tunnel with ease. Picture this. A story is told with trembling words. It involves pain, loss, maybe even injustice. The one who tells it does not ask for anything directly, but you find yourself moved, so you give. Maybe your time, maybe your money, maybe your silence, not because of facts, not because of logic, but because you felt their pain. This is not manipulation in the obvious sense. It does not shout or demand. It whispers with vulnerability, and that is what makes it so powerful. The empathy exploit is when someone uses their suffering or the appearance of suffering to gain power over your choices. It is not always a scam. It does not always involve money. Sometimes it is as small as making you feel guilty for saying no. Other times, it is as big as guiding whole movements with stories instead of truth. What makes this so hard to see is that the feelings are real. When someone cries in front of you, their tears are not fake. When they share their hurt, they are not pretending. But the moment that pain becomes a tool to bend your will, it moves into a different space. One where emotion replaces reason, where connection becomes control. We have all been there. A friend who always seems to be in a crisis, and every time you try to set a boundary, they remind you of how alone they are. You give in again and again, not because you want to, but because you cannot stand the weight of their sadness. Or a public figure sharing a tragic backstory before asking for your trust, your vote, your loyalty. The backstory might be true, but the way it is placed becomes strategic. It is not just a detail. It is a weapon. The mind does not always separate truth from strategy. When we hear a story that stirs our heart, our guard drops, our critical thinking slows. We want to help. We want to heal. And in that beautiful impulse, we become vulnerable. It is not our weakness. It is our strength being used against us. Even in relationships, this dynamic can unfold slowly. One person always needs help. The other always provides, but over time, the balance becomes uneven. The helper begins to lose their sense of self, their time, their energy, all given in service of not wanting to hurt the other. The one receiving may not even realize what they are doing. but their pain becomes their power, and the giver becomes trapped not in chains, but in compassion. The empathy exploit is not about evil. It is about imbalance. It is when emotion overrides equality, when one person's suffering becomes a permanent shield from responsibility, when every action is forgiven because it came from a place of pain. This does not build connection. It builds dependency, and it silences the natural voice of fairness that should guide all relationships. So how do we defend against this? Not by closing our hearts, but by learning to ask quiet questions beneath the emotion. Am I helping because I choose to, or because I feel like I have no choice? Am I giving from a place of care, or from fear of being seen as cold? True empathy invites freedom. It gives without expecting. It feels deeply but remains rooted in respect. When empathy turns into a pressure to surrender, it is no longer pure. It has been hijacked. There is a difference between supporting someone and being emotionally blackmailed, and that line is often blurred by stories, by tears, by the powerful language of hurt. We must learn to listen with both heart and mind, to care without collapsing, to hold space for someone's pain without erasing our own needs. This does not mean becoming cynical. It means becoming aware. It means recognizing when your emotions are being stirred for a purpose that does not serve you. It means knowing that real connection is mutual, and real healing is not one-sided. The best relationships are those where empathy flows both ways, where no one hides behind their pain, and no one is punished for having boundaries. There is beauty in being soft. But strength does not live far from softness. Strength is the ability to feel everything and still see clearly, to care deeply and still choose wisely, to give with open hands, but not with closed eyes. So the next time you feel that tug in your chest, that impulse to fix, to give, to stay quiet, pause for a moment. Feel the feeling fully. But then ask yourself gently, is this empathy or is it an exploit? You do not need to stop caring. You just need to care in a way that includes yourself. The empathy exploit fades the moment we remember this truth. That real compassion is not a surrender. It is a choice. And you are allowed to choose where your heart flows. You are allowed to ask, to reflect, and to protect your peace, even while you love others. That is not selfishness. That is wisdom. And wisdom is what turns empathy from a weapon into a gift. The Reciprocity Loop. Imagine someone hands you a small gift. Nothing expensive, maybe just a cup of coffee or a thoughtful compliment. You smile. You thank them. But almost immediately, a quiet voice in your mind whispers that now you owe them something. Maybe not right away, but the feeling lingers. The gesture sits with you. And before you know it, you are looking for a way to return the favor. This is the Reciprocity Loop. A deeply human tendency to repay kindness with kindness, often without being asked. This loop is one of the oldest psychological patterns in human behavior. It helped us survive as communities long before there were contracts or rules. When someone gave, you gave back. Not because you had to, but because the relationship mattered. Reciprocity created bonds, trust, safety. Over time, this instinct became automatic. It shaped how we connect with others. But like many ancient instincts, it can be used for good or for manipulation. Marketers and social engineers have long understood the power of this loop. They know that if they give you something first, you are more likely to comply later. Free samples at a store are not just generosity. They are a trigger. You take the sample, and suddenly, you feel just a little more open to the product. A charity sends you a small gift in the mail, maybe a sticker or a pen, and you feel nudged toward donating. That is not an accident. That is strategy. But it goes deeper than transactions. The reciprocity loop can shape friendships, relationships, even power dynamics. Someone listens to your problems, so you feel obligated to be available for theirs, even if it drains you. Someone offers to help you move, so now you feel like you cannot say no the next time they need something, even if your schedule is packed. The exchange is not always balanced, but the pressure remains. What makes this loop powerful is not that it forces you to give back. It is that it makes you want to. You want to be fair. You want to be kind. You want to match the energy that was shown to you. That is beautiful when it flows naturally. But when it becomes a pattern used to control your behavior, it turns from kindness into a cage. Sometimes, the loop is disguised. Someone may offer you praise, support, or connection as a form of social currency. They build rapport, they mirror your values, they show up in your world. And then slowly, they begin to ask for more. Not always directly, but through expectations, through silence when you do not reciprocate quickly enough, through guilt that settles quietly in your chest. You start wondering, am I being selfish? Did I let them down? And so, you give again. To become free from unconscious reciprocity, you must become more aware of your giving and receiving. Ask yourself, am I giving because I want to or because I feel like I have to? Is this kindness coming from love or from pressure? Am I receiving fully or am I calculating what I will owe? There is a way to break the loop without breaking the bond. Start by allowing others to give to you without needing to return it immediately. Receive with gratitude, not obligation. Say thank you. Let it settle. Trust that your presence, your time, your friendship are already valuable. When you give to others, do it from a place of choice. Not because you expect something in return, but because it feels true to you. This kind of giving is clean. It leaves no residue. It does not trap others. It frees them. And in that freedom, real connection can grow. You can also learn to gently resist manipulative reciprocity. When someone gives you something with strings attached, name it inwardly. See the pattern. Step back. You are allowed to receive without surrendering. You are allowed to appreciate without owing. You are allowed to give later, in your own way, or not at all. Reciprocity is a beautiful rhythm when it flows naturally. It keeps relationships alive. It creates warmth. But when it becomes a loop that you cannot exit, it becomes a drain, an invisible weight, a quiet pressure to keep proving your worth. Your value is not measured by how much you give back. It is measured by your presence, your intention, your truth. And the more you return to those anchors, the less you will be caught in loops you did not choose. The reciprocity loop will always exist, but awareness can change its shape. It can turn it from a cycle of pressure into a dance of generosity, one where you give because you mean it, one where you receive because you are worthy, one where the exchange is not a burden but a blessing. The comfort trap, illusion. Imagine you are lying on a soft couch, a warm blanket pulled over your body. Outside, the rain taps gently on the window, and there is nothing demanding your attention. No deadlines, no conversations, no expectations, just quiet, warmth, and the familiar feeling of stillness. In that moment, everything feels perfect, safe, but beneath that stillness, something else begins to form. Not peace, not rest, but a slow, invisible weight. This is the beginning of the comfort trap illusion. Comfort is not the enemy. In fact, it is something every human being deserves to feel. It helps us recover, recharge, and breathe a little easier in a world that constantly pulls us in every direction. But comfort, when left unchecked, starts to grow roots. It wraps around your choices. It builds walls that keep out not only discomfort, but also growth. And that is where the illusion begins. Comfort tells you that staying the same is safer than changing. It whispers that risk is danger, and that ambition is stress in disguise. It convinces you that avoidance is wisdom, that waiting is strategy, and that stillness is always peace. But in truth, many times what we call comfort is just fear wearing a soft disguise. Picture this man. He once had dreams that stirred his soul, ideas that made him feel alive. But now, he wakes up each day to a routine that is predictable. The job pays just enough. The relationships are stable. The weekends are quiet. And yet, somewhere inside, something feels unfinished. Not broken, just muted. But he tells himself he is lucky, that wanting more is greedy, that leaving the familiar is foolish. So he stays. And slowly, without pain or warning, his dreams begin to fade. This is not laziness. It is not failure. It is simply the trap, the illusion that comfort is the goal. But the truth is, comfort is a phase, not a destination. It is meant to be a rest stop, not a home. Growth lives just beyond its edge. And yet the longer we stay, the harder it becomes to leave. The comfort trap illusion often appears in small decisions, choosing not to speak up because it might cause friction, skipping the workout because the bed is too warm, staying in a job that does not inspire because it pays well enough, saying yes when your heart says no, just to avoid a hard conversation. These are not mistakes. They are trades, tiny exchanges of discomfort for peace, but over time, the cost becomes your direction, your energy, your aliveness. The illusion works because it feels good in the moment. It rewards you instantly, but that reward is temporary. It fades quickly, and in its place comes a quiet dissatisfaction, a question that echoes deeper each time you ignore it. Is this all there is? And the illusion fights back with justifications. It tells you that pushing harder will burn you out, that chasing something new is reckless, that comfort means success. But the truth is, growth requires discomfort, and without that, comfort becomes a cage, a velvet prison. Soft on the outside, but firm in its grip. There is a kind of rest that rejuvenates, but there is another kind that drains you, slowly and silently. When you stay too long in the zone of ease, your instincts begin to weaken. Your courage begins to sleep. You stop seeking. You stop stretching. And before you know it, you begin to shrink from your own potential. The most dangerous part is that everything feels fine. Not amazing, not terrible, just fine. And that word becomes a spell. It stops you from asking more, from wanting more, from becoming more. But comfort should never be a reason to hide. It should be a place to prepare, to gather strength before you leap, not to avoid the leap itself. Real fulfillment often waits just past the place you want to stop, just beyond the feeling of enough. And sometimes the only way to find it is to move when you least want to. So, how do you escape this illusion? You begin by noticing the difference between true rest and passive escape, between alignment and avoidance. Ask yourself, am I choosing this because it nourishes me, or because it demands nothing from me? Does this path keep me alive, or just keep me still? The answer will not always be loud. Sometimes it is a whisper that says, you were made for more, not in a way that shames your present, but in a way that calls out your future. The comfort trap illusion loses its power the moment you start listening to that voice, the one that asks you to trade temporary ease for long-term purpose. The real freedom lies not in avoiding discomfort, but in understanding its value. Discomfort teaches, it refines, it uncovers. When you step into it, you do not lose peace. You find a deeper kind of peace, one that comes from knowing you are living in alignment with your potential, that you are not hiding behind warmth, but walking through fire to become who you are meant to be. And there's beauty in that, not in the struggle itself, but in what it reveals. Your strength, your resilience, your vision. The comfort trap illusion will always try to tell you that safety is everything. But the soul does not thrive in safety. It thrives in truth, in risk, in becoming. So remember this. Comfort is not wrong. But when it stops you from moving forward, it becomes a lie. A sweet one, a quiet one, but still a lie. And you deserve more than that. You deserve to grow, to evolve, to feel fully awake, even when it is uncomfortable, especially when it is uncomfortable. Because on the other side of that discomfort is not pain, it is purpose. and purpose is the only comfort worth chasing. The Scarcity Mirage. Picture yourself walking through a vast desert. The sun is high, the ground is dry, and your throat is parched. Far in the distance you spot a shimmer. It looks like water. A blue pool glistening under the heat. You start moving toward it. Your pace quickens. You believe you are close. But as you arrive, the shimmer fades. It was never real. It was only a mirage. This is the Scarcity Mirage. The illusion that something is rare, and because it feels rare, it must be chased. The Scarcity Mirage is not just about resources. It is a feeling. A psychological fog that makes you believe that what you have is not enough, and that what you want might disappear if you do not act fast. This illusion plays on a very primal instinct in the human brain. When we think something is limited, our attention locks on it. We stop evaluating it for what it is, and start reacting to the fear of losing it. This fear is not based on logic. It is based on imagination. You imagine what might happen if you missed the chance. You imagine someone else getting what you did not. You imagine regret. And so, you act. You buy the thing. You say yes too quickly. You rush into a decision. You reach out to someone you would not normally chase. You let go of your standards. Because in that moment, it feels like now or never. But most of the time, it is not. Most opportunities are not as rare as they seem. Most products will be available again. Most choices can be revisited. The urgency is not real. It is a mirage, crafted through words, through countdowns, through silence, through imagined futures that may never come. The Scarcity Mirage is everywhere. It is in the flash sale that ends at midnight, in the limited edition label, in the dating advice that tells you someone will move on if you do not act now, in the job offer that pressures you to decide by the end of the day. It is in the voice inside your head that says, "If I do not grab this now, I will regret it forever." This voice is persuasive, but it is not always wise. Because the moment you act from fear, you lose your clarity. You make decisions from panic, not peace. You stop asking important questions. Is this right for me? Do I really need this? Would I still want it if there was no rush? The mirage becomes dangerous when it leads you away from your values, when it makes you compromise, when it steals your time and energy chasing things that were never meant for you. The mind fixates on what it does not have, and in that fixation, it forgets what it already does. But there is a way out. The way out is presence, grounding yourself in the now, reminding yourself that urgency is often an illusion. When you notice the pressure to act fast, breathe, step back. Ask yourself what would change if you waited a day, or a week, or even an hour. If the value is real, it will still be there. If it disappears, maybe it was not meant for you. Reframe how you see scarcity. Instead of letting it create fear, let it invite thought. If something is truly rare, then it deserves your full attention, not your rushed reaction, not your anxious yes, but your careful consideration. Scarcity can be a signal, but it should never be a trap. Also remember that sometimes the mirage is emotional. You may think love is scarce, or success, or joy. You may believe there is only a small window for your life to work out, that if it does not happen now, it will never happen. But this is also an illusion. Life is not a race. It is a rhythm. What is meant for you will not ask you to betray yourself to catch it. You do not need to chase every sparkle in the sand. Some will vanish as you get closer. Others will wait for you to arrive. Your job is not to move faster. Your job is to see clearly, to know what is real, to trust yourself enough to let go of the chase. In a world that feeds on urgency, patience is power. Clarity is rebellion. You can still want things. You can still strive. But let it come from desire, not desperation. Let it come from awareness, not fear. The Scarcity Mirage loses its power the moment you stop running toward it. And in that stillness, you begin to see what truly matters. Not what might disappear, but what will stay. Not what looks good in the distance, but what feels right up close. That is how you find peace. Not in chasing the rare, but in choosing the real. The consistency snare. Picture this man. He wakes up every morning at the same time. He eats the same breakfast, walks the same route, smiles at the same people, sits at the same desk, and works with the same rhythm. People admire his discipline. They call him reliable, stable, committed. And yet, behind his calm eyes, something is fading. Not his energy, not his motivation, but his spark. Because while the world praises consistency, it rarely warns about what happens when it turns into a snare. We are taught that consistency is the secret to success. That showing up every day, sticking to the routine, doing what we promised even when we do not feel like it is a virtue. And that is often true. Consistency builds habits. It creates results. But sometimes, it does something else. It locks us into patterns that no longer serve us. It traps us inside systems we built for ourselves long ago. Systems that we never stop to question. The consistency snare is what happens when our devotion to being consistent becomes more important than being alive. When we stay on the path, not because it is still the right one, but because we once said it was. When we hold on to goals that no longer feel meaningful, just because we do not want to look like we gave up. It is not a failure of willpower. It is a misplacement of identity. Consistency, when it becomes rigid, stops being strength. It turns into a performance, a loop, a cycle that numbs the soul while checking all the boxes. We end up doing things out of memory, not meaning, and slowly, we forget how to change. There is a kind of pride that comes from saying, I have never missed a day. I have done this for years without fail. But sometimes, behind that pride is a quiet fear. The fear of what it would mean if we stopped. If we took a different route. If we let go of something that no longer fits who we are becoming. The fear that breaking the pattern would somehow break us. But change is not a betrayal. It is a reflection of growth, of listening to your inner voice when it says something has shifted. The consistency snare makes that voice feel like a threat. It says, do not question, just keep going. You are known for this. You are safe here. But safety without alignment is not peace. It is just familiar discomfort. This snare appears most often in habits that once helped us. A career we fought hard to build, now quietly draining us. A daily ritual that once gave structure, now feeling empty. A persona we built, now keeping us from exploring deeper layers of who we are. The consistency itself is not the problem. The problem is the silence around it, the absence of reflection, the refusal to ask, is this still true for me? There is a powerful human need to appear consistent to others. Psychologists call it the need for cognitive harmony. We want our actions to match our past beliefs, and we want others to see us as reliable. But this desire can trap us. It can make us lie to ourselves just to maintain the image, and that is where the snare tightens. We begin saying yes out of habit. We keep promises that no longer make sense. We avoid change because change looks like failure. But the real failure is pretending we are the same person we were 5 years ago, or even 1 year ago. Growth means letting some things go, even if we once loved them, even if they once defined us. So how do we escape this snare without falling into chaos? It begins with gentle honesty, a moment of pause to ask yourself, am I doing this because it still nourishes me? Or because I am afraid of what it means to stop? Do I continue because I want to, or because I do not know who I am without it? That question does not mean you abandon every routine. It means you examine them with curiosity, not fear. You make space to evolve, to rewrite your script, to say, I used to be this, but now I feel something else calling. And that calling is not a distraction. It is your becoming. The consistency snare loses its power the moment you give yourself permission to change direction, not impulsively, but consciously, from a place of clarity, from a place of truth. Because real consistency is not about doing the same thing forever. It is about staying connected to your values, even as the form changes. You can be consistent in showing up for your growth, even if that means leaving behind a routine that no longer serves you. You can be loyal to your deeper purpose, even if that purpose asks you to shift. You are allowed to end something that looks successful on the outside, but feels hollow within. Consistency is beautiful when it is aligned, but when it becomes a mask, a cage, a silent agreement with your past self to never evolve, it is no longer strength. It is stagnation dressed as commitment. So picture the man again, still waking up early, still walking the same route, but this time, he stops. He looks up. He asks himself, what do I want now? Not what did I want? Not what do others expect? But what does my present self feel drawn toward? He does not have to burn it all down, but he is free to choose again, and you are too. You are not meant to be a statue. You are meant to be a river, always moving, always adjusting to the shape of the land around you. Do not let your routines become your identity. Let your awareness be your guide. Because in the end, true consistency is not about repetition. It is about renewal. The body language lie. Imagine standing in front of someone during a conversation. Their arms are crossed. Their eyes glance away. Their mouth is tight. Instantly, your mind begins to read the signs. They must be upset. They must be bored. They are probably judging you. You adjust your tone. You overthink your words. You feel a wave of discomfort rising. But what if they are just cold? What if they are tired? What if none of their body language has anything to do with you? This is the body language lie. The false belief that we can always accurately read what someone is thinking or feeling based on their posture, movements, or expressions. It sounds wise. We are told that over 90% of communication is nonverbal, that we should trust the signs more than the words. And while there is truth in that, there is also a trap, because body language is not a code. It is not a fixed language. It is layered, shaped by context, personality, and even habit. A person looking down may not be hiding something. They may just be thinking. A person shifting their weight may not be anxious. They may simply be uncomfortable standing too long. Someone who avoids eye contact might not be dishonest. They might have grown up in a culture where looking directly at someone is considered rude. Yet our minds love to jump to conclusions. We are wired to seek patterns, to fill in blanks. So when we see a gesture or a shift, we assign meaning. Often, we are projecting our own state onto the other person. If we are nervous, we think they are judging us. If we feel insecure, we assume they are disapproving. This creates a loop. We react not to their truth, but to our interpretation, and that interpretation becomes our reality. This is how miscommunication grows. You read their body. You respond based on your assumption. They react to your shift. And both of you walk away feeling misunderstood, never knowing that the entire moment was shaped by misread signals. The body language lie becomes more powerful when it is taught as absolute. Books, articles, even training programs will say things like, crossed arms mean defensiveness, or touching your face means deceit. But humans are more complex than formulas. A gesture can have dozens of meanings. And more often than not, body language reflects comfort, not truth. Think about your own body language. How often do you shift your position simply because your leg falls asleep? How often do you smile just to be polite, even if you feel tired or sad? How often do you nod just to keep the conversation flowing, even if you are not fully agreeing? Now imagine someone trying to decode those actions. How much would they get wrong? To move past the body language lie, we need to replace assumption with curiosity. Instead of thinking, they must be upset, try asking, I noticed they seemed distant. I wonder what is going on. Instead of assuming rejection, ask yourself, Could there be another reason? This gentle questioning keeps the door open. It allows space for multiple truths. When you are the one being read, it can feel uncomfortable. You may find yourself overthinking how you sit, how you move, how you smile, especially in high-pressure settings like interviews, dates, or negotiations. You worry that a single slip will send the wrong message, that your hands in your pockets will cost you a connection, that your glance away will be misunderstood. But the truth is, people see you through their own lens, and that lens is rarely clear. You cannot control how others read you, but you can control how honest you are in your presence. Ground yourself in calmness. Let your gestures reflect your truth. Speak with clarity. And when you are unsure how someone feels, ask them. Ask with care, not confrontation. Let them share instead of assuming for them. Body language is a beautiful signal, but it is only one part of the whole. When paired with tone, context, and genuine listening, it can offer insight. But when isolated, it becomes a trap. It becomes a mirror that reflects not just the other person, but your own fears. Learning to listen deeply requires stillness, not just in body, but in thought. It means waiting a little longer before judging. It means trusting the words as much as the gestures. It means remembering that not everything you see is about you, and not everything they do has meaning that needs decoding. In a world where silence is often louder than speech, the ability to pause and observe without reacting is rare and powerful. It frees you from the need to always know. It teaches you to be present instead of predictive. It helps you connect without controlling. The body language lie loses its power the moment you stop seeing yourself as the decoder of others. You are not here to interpret every shift, every blink, every fidget. You are here to be open, to engage, to ask, to understand. And when you do that, real connection begins, not in the gestures, but in the space between them. The identity confirmation trick. Imagine a boy who was once told he was smart. It happened again and again. From his teachers, from his parents, from classmates who noticed how quickly he solved problems. Over time, those words began to form something deeper inside him, a quiet, invisible rule. I am the smart one. And so he made decisions to protect that title. He avoided tasks he might fail at. He spoke only when he was certain he was right. He chased achievements, not for passion, but to defend a reputation. He did not know it then, but he had walked straight into a powerful and subtle trap. This is the identity confirmation trick. The mind has a deep hunger for stability. It wants to know who you are, and it wants to be sure of it. So it builds an image, a set of traits. You are kind. You are strong. You are clever. You are loyal. These beliefs often come from others, especially when we are young. And once they stick, we start acting in ways that protect them. Not because they are always true, but because we fear what it would mean if they were not. The identity confirmation trick is the mind's habit of filtering every decision, thought, and reaction through the lens of who you think you are, or more accurately, who you think you must continue to be. It feels safe. It feels right. But it slowly traps you inside an old version of yourself, one that may no longer match your present truth. Picture this girl. All her life, she was told she was caring, that she always put others first, that she had a big heart, and she did, but as she grew, she began to feel overwhelmed. People leaned on her constantly. She struggled to say no. She felt guilty for resting. And even when she wanted space, she gave more. Not because she wanted to, but because she feared becoming someone she was not supposed to be. That fear was not about hurting others. It was about losing herself. This is how the trick works. It takes your identity and makes it into a rule book. It says, if you are kind, then you must never disappoint. If you are brave, then you must never be scared. If you are smart, then you must never be confused. So when life brings moments that do not match the identity, you do not see them as natural. You see them as threats, and instead of adapting, you resist. But identity is not supposed to be a fixed label. It is meant to be a living reflection. Something that shifts as you grow. Something that evolves with your experience. When it hardens, it becomes a mask, and that mask begins to control you. The trick is most dangerous when you are unaware of it. When you think your choices are fully your own, but really, they are shaped by a silent pressure to be consistent with your image. You avoid conflict because you are the peacemaker. You overwork because you are the achiever. You hide your doubts because you are the confident one, and no one tells you to do it. You just feel you must. The mind does this to avoid pain. Because questioning your identity feels like breaking something sacred. It feels like betrayal. But it is not betrayal. It is honesty. And honesty is the only way to grow. There's a kind of freedom that comes when you allow yourself to be more than one thing. When you stop chasing confirmation and start embracing contradiction, you can be strong and still need help. You can be generous and still say no. You can be brilliant and still not know the answer. You are not here to pass a test of consistency. You are here to discover yourself, again and again. The identity confirmation trick becomes especially clear when you try something new. The doubts rise. This is not who I am. I am not the type of person who does this. And so you pull back, not because it is wrong, but because it feels unfamiliar. That unfamiliarity becomes discomfort, and that discomfort becomes avoidance. But all growth begins in unfamiliar places. You cannot become more while holding tightly to who you used to be. The mind resists change not because it is bad, but because it is uncertain. And uncertainty feels dangerous, but it is not. It is the doorway to becoming. To escape this trick, you must learn to catch it in action. Notice when you say things like, I am just not that kind of person, or I always do this. Ask yourself, is that still true, or is it just comfortable? Who gave me this label? And why am I still carrying it? You are allowed to reinvent. You are allowed to let go of traits that no longer serve you. You are allowed to explore new sides of yourself without explanation. Because identity is not a prison, it is a mirror. And mirrors should not stay still forever. So imagine the boy again, the one who thought he always had to be smart. One day he joins a class where he struggles. He is not the best. He is not even above average. For the first time, he feels lost. And instead of hiding, he stays. He asks questions. He allows himself to be the beginner. In doing so, he does not lose his intelligence. He expands it. Because true growth is not about proving who you are. It is about allowing yourself to become. You do not have to protect your image forever. You can be soft one day and firm the next. You can feel brave and still admit fear. You can rest and still be driven. The trick loses its grip when you let your identity breathe. Let it shift. Let it surprise you. Let it be wrong sometimes. Because in that space, something honest begins to unfold. Something deeper than the labels. Something real. You are not here to confirm an old story. You are here to write a new one. And every time you choose authenticity over consistency, that story becomes more alive. The familiarity pressure effect. Imagine walking into a room full of people you've known for years. Their faces are familiar. Their laughter is comforting. They remember who you were in school, how you used to speak, what made you laugh back then. You sit among them, and something strange happens. You start behaving like your old self. Even if you have changed. Even if you no longer relate to that version of you. You laugh at jokes you have outgrown. You stay quiet when you would normally speak up. You shrink a little, just to fit into the shape they remember. This is the familiarity pressure effect. The quiet force that pulls us back toward who we were, simply because others expect it. It is not loud. It is not hostile. It feels like warmth, like home. But that comfort can become a cage. Familiarity brings a sense of safety. It tells our nervous system, you are not alone. You are known here. And that can be beautiful. But when being known becomes being confined, it creates tension. You feel the need to maintain an image that may no longer reflect your truth. You feel watched, even if no one is judging. You feel locked into an identity you have outgrown. This effect starts early. Our families remember us as children. Our friends remember our younger selves. Even our past behavior becomes a kind of social contract. If you were always the peacemaker, people expect you not to cause conflict. If you were always the funny one, they expect you to keep the energy high. If you were always shy, they treat your silence as normal, even when it starts to feel heavy. Over time, these expectations shape how we show up. Not because anyone is forcing us, but because we do not want to disappoint. We fear breaking the bond, so we comply. We play the role. We stay in character. But change is natural. Growth is necessary. And yet the familiarity pressure makes it harder to step into who you are becoming. The more familiar the environment, the stronger the pull. You may find it easier to express your true self with strangers than with the people you love. Not because they are wrong, but because the script is already written, and it takes courage to rewrite it. This pressure shows up in subtle ways. You may avoid sharing new ideas with old friends because you worry they will not understand. You may downplay your success around family members because you do not want to make anyone uncomfortable. You may laugh at stories that no longer amuse you because it feels easier than explaining how much you've changed. You might even begin to question your own transformation. Was I really happier then? Was I better off being who I was? This doubt is not the truth. It is the echo of a past that feels easier because it is familiar. But ease is not always aligned with growth. To move through the familiarity pressure effect, the first step is awareness. Begin by noticing where you feel smaller than you are. Pay attention to the people or places where your behavior starts to shift, not because it feels natural, but because it feels expected. Ask yourself, who am I being right now? And who do I want to be? You do not have to confront anyone. You do not need to break ties or reject your past. This is not about rebellion. It is about alignment. It is about quietly, slowly, beginning to act in ways that reflect your current truth. Maybe that means expressing a new opinion. Maybe it means choosing silence in a space where you used to fill the room. Maybe it means setting a boundary where you once said yes too quickly. It will feel uncomfortable at first. That is okay. You are rewriting the script, and any good rewrite begins with pauses, stumbles, and moments of doubt. The people around you may need time to adjust. Some will resist. Not because they want to control you, but because your change challenges their understanding of who you are. That challenge may make them uncomfortable, but you are not responsible for their comfort. You are responsible for your own authenticity. Over time, your consistency will create new patterns, new expectations. People will begin to meet you where you are, instead of where you used to be. And those who cannot may fade. That is part of the journey. Not everyone is meant to walk with every version of you. But you will find new spaces, new people, new parts of yourself that only emerge when you stop living under the weight of who you were. And when that happens, you will breathe a little deeper, speak a little clearer, stand a little taller. Not because you are trying to be someone new, but because you are finally being someone real. The familiarity pressure effect may never disappear completely, but it loses its grip when you become conscious of it. When you choose presence over performance, when you value truth over tradition, and when you give yourself permission to evolve, even when others still see the older version of you. Picture this man. He returns to his hometown after years of living elsewhere. He has changed. His thoughts are deeper, his habits are healthier, he walks differently now. But as he steps into the familiar streets, something starts to shift. Old faces greet him with the same jokes, the same questions, the same roles. And slowly, Without meaning to, he adjusts. He laughs the old way. He answers the way he used to. He feels the weight of being who they remember instead of who he has become. This is the second layer of the familiarity pressure effect. Not just the quiet expectation to remain the same, but the invisible influence of environment itself. Places carry memories. Rooms carry echoes. A couch, a hallway, even a street corner can trigger behaviors you thought you had outgrown. The body remembers what the mind has moved past. And unless you are mindful, you can slip into an old version of yourself without even realizing it. This effect deepens when we seek acceptance, when we crave approval, when we fear becoming unrecognizable to the people who once made us feel safe. There's a subtle guilt that arises when we grow beyond what others expected. A part of us wants to protect them from discomfort, to shield them from feeling left behind. So we shrink ourselves just a little. We simplify our story. We pretend we are still the same. But pretending has a cost. It may preserve the connection, but it comes at the price of authenticity. And with time, that cost adds up. You feel drained after interactions that should be fulfilling. You feel unseen even when surrounded by people who know your name. You carry a version of yourself that is no longer true. This inner conflict can be quiet but heavy. It shows up in subtle ways. You hesitate to bring up the things you care about. You stay vague about your goals. You soften your voice, your language, your ambition. You blend, not because you want to, but because standing out feels like betrayal. You are not alone in this. Many people feel the same when they return to familiar settings. Growth often comes with distance. And not just physical distance, but emotional and identity distance. You begin to understand that change, real change, sometimes asks you to disappoint others, to be misunderstood, to be seen differently. And that can feel like loss. But it is not the kind of loss that leaves you empty. It is the kind that makes room. When you let go of old versions of yourself, you create space for your current self to breathe. When you release the need to be who they remember, you begin to feel who you really are. This shift takes courage. You may need to start small. Try bringing your new self into old spaces gently. Talk about your new interests. Share what matters to you now. Let your presence carry the quiet power of honesty. Not as a performance, not to prove anything, but simply because you have outgrown the script and it no longer fits. Some people will resist. They will say, "You have changed," and they will not mean it as a compliment. But that sentence is actually a sign of growth. It means your evolution is visible. It means you are no longer playing the same role. It means you are moving. You can acknowledge their discomfort without apologizing for your growth. You can hold compassion for their confusion without carrying it as your burden. You can still love them, still appreciate them, but you do not have to stay small for them. There is another side to the familiarity pressure effect that is even more subtle. Sometimes it does not come from others at all. It comes from within. You expect yourself to feel a certain way in familiar spaces. You tell yourself stories like, "I always get anxious here," or "I never fit in with this group." And those stories become instructions. You follow them, even if they are no longer true. But your past is not your contract. You are allowed to revise the story. You are allowed to feel differently now. You are allowed to reintroduce yourself to the world, one moment at a time. Try creating small rituals that ground you in your current self. Before entering an old space, pause, breathe. Remind yourself who you are now. Speak to yourself kindly. Say, "I am no longer who I was," and that is okay. This reminder acts like a compass. It keeps you centered when the pull to revert begins. Also, give yourself permission to outgrow relationships. This does not mean cutting people off. It means accepting that some bonds are built for a version of you that no longer exists. And that letting go is not rejection. It is release. It frees both of you to find new connections that reflect where you are now. The familiarity pressure effect is strong, but it is not absolute. You can walk back into old rooms without losing yourself. You can reconnect with people from your past without pretending to be your past. You can be both familiar and new. You are allowed to change, to evolve, to become someone different in front of the people who once knew you best. And if they truly care for you, they will adjust. It might take time, but they will see you, the real you, eventually. Now imagine this moment. You are sitting in the same chair you once sat in years ago. The people around you are the same. The stories are the same. Even the rhythm of the conversation feels frozen in time. But something in you is different. You are aware. You are awake. You are watching your thoughts without obeying them. You feel the pull to slip back into your old self, but this time you pause. You stay with yourself, and in that pause, something powerful happens. You realize you are free. This is the turning point of the familiarity pressure effect, when awareness becomes choice. When you are no longer trapped in the cycle of performing who you were. You are no longer shrinking to fit the past. You are no longer acting small so others stay comfortable. You are simply being. True freedom comes when you stop fearing who you are in the presence of who you were. It is when you stop asking for permission to grow. It is when you carry your truth with such quiet confidence that no space can make you forget it. But it takes time to get here. It takes many small moments of discomfort. It takes learning how to hold space for your new self without guilt. It takes understanding that you are not being rude or distant when you choose authenticity. You are being honest. And honesty sometimes makes people uncomfortable because it shifts the dynamic. It changes the pattern. But that shift is necessary for deeper connection, because real connection is not built on comfort alone. It is built on truth. It is built when two people can evolve and still meet each other without masks. When growth is welcomed, not feared. When silence is respected, not filled with assumptions. When differences are not threats, but bridges. The more you stay rooted in your present self, the more your relationships will adjust. Some will rise to meet you. They will start to see the new you. They will ask deeper questions. They will share more honestly. They will grow too. Others may fall away, and that is okay. Not every connection is meant to travel the full distance with you. Some are meant to teach you, support you, and then let go. Letting go is not failure. It is space-making. It is honoring the truth that some relationships only work when you are willing to play a role. And once that role no longer fits, the connection fades. That is not something to mourn. That is something to accept. And when you do, you create room for new energy to enter your life. New people. New places. New parts of yourself. Sometimes, we hold on to the familiar because it gives us a sense of identity. We think, this is who I am, because this is how they know me. But identity is not meant to be fixed. It is meant to expand, to evolve. You are not a character. You are not a label. You are a process, a becoming. And becoming cannot happen in a cage. The final step in freeing yourself from the familiarity pressure effect is learning how to speak your new self out loud, not in a defensive way, not to prove anything, but as an invitation. You can say things like, I used to feel that way, but I see it differently now. Or, I know that version of me was true then, but this is who I am today. These words are simple, but they are powerful. They are signals that you are no longer hiding, that you are willing to be seen fully, even if it means being misunderstood at first. You may be surprised how many people are waiting for permission to do the same. When you show up as yourself, it gives others the courage to do the same. Your presence becomes a quiet rebellion against roles, against scripts, against smallness. And in that rebellion, something beautiful happens. The room changes, the people change, the conversation deepens, and the connection becomes real. You are not meant to stay who you were. You are meant to grow, to stretch, to shift. And that growth will not always be welcomed, but it will always be necessary. You are allowed to take up more space, to speak with a new voice, to walk with a new rhythm. Even if it confuses the people who think they know you, you are allowed to be proud of how far you have come. You are allowed to let your past be a chapter, not the whole story. You are allowed to be unfamiliar in familiar places. That unfamiliarity is not a problem. It is proof. Proof that you are alive. Proof that you are learning. Proof that you are not stuck. So when the old space pulls you, smile. Thank it for shaping you. Thank it for holding you once. And then breathe deeply and step forward as you are now, without apology, without fear, without asking anyone to understand. You are no longer here to play the part. You are here to live your truth. And that, quietly and completely, is how you break free from the familiarity pressure effect. The silent guilt technique. Imagine you are sitting across from someone you care about. You are both quiet. You know something needs to be said, but it stays unspoken. There is no shouting, no blaming, just a slow heaviness building between the silences. They glance at you, then look away. And somehow, without words, you begin to feel responsible, not for what you did, but for what they feel. This is how the silent guilt technique begins, not with accusation, but with absence, not with noise, but with quiet pressure. This technique does not involve harshness or threats. It does not attack your actions directly. Instead, it surrounds you with subtle emotions, expressed through pauses, distance, and disappointment. It leaves just enough space for your mind to fill in the gaps. You start guessing, maybe I said too much, maybe I should not have brought that up, maybe I am the reason they are upset. You try to read their silence like a script, even when there are no clear lines. It often comes from people who are close, friends, family, partners, people whose opinions matter to you. That is what makes it so effective. When they withdraw emotionally or become cold without explanation, it creates tension. You begin to feel guilty even without evidence of doing something wrong. The absence of clarity becomes its own kind of message, a silent message that says, you should know what you did. But this guilt is not always deserved. Sometimes it is a projection, a way for the other person to shift discomfort without taking responsibility for their feelings. Instead of sharing how they feel, they hold it in, just enough to make you uncomfortable. And the moment you begin to feel bad, the balance shifts. You become the one reaching out, the one trying to fix something you do not understand. That confusion becomes your burden. The silent guilt technique works because of empathy. When we care about someone, we are naturally sensitive to their emotional state. We want peace, we want connection, and when that connection feels broken, even slightly, we instinctively look for ways to repair it. Often, that means bending ourselves, apologizing, over-explaining, or even accepting blame just to restore harmony. But sometimes, that restoration comes at a personal cost. There is nothing wrong with caring deeply. But when you are made to feel guilty for things you never agreed were wrong, you are not resolving a problem, you are entering a silent agreement to carry emotional weight that is not yours. This technique is rarely used with awareness. Most people who use it are not trying to manipulate you outright. They may not even realize what they are doing. They are simply uncomfortable expressing their own needs or pain directly, so they express it passively. Silence becomes their voice, and guilt becomes their tool. The danger is that this pattern can repeat for years. Entire relationships can be built on unspoken tension, one person constantly adjusting, the other constantly withholding. The bond may look peaceful on the outside, but beneath it is a quiet imbalance. The one who always feels guilty begins to lose their own sense of clarity. They question themselves more than they should. They speak more carefully than they need to, and they slowly forget what it feels like to act freely without emotional debt. Over time, this creates internal fatigue. You begin to sense the guilt before it even arrives. You change your words before you finish your thought. You tiptoe through your conversations, editing yourself to avoid the invisible reaction. This is not love. This is not respect. This is a form of quiet control, gentle in tone, but firm in impact. So how do you recognize when you are caught in it? Start by noticing how often you feel unsure after conversations. Do you often feel like you need to say sorry, even when no one asked you to? Do you find yourself chasing clarity that never comes? Are you constantly reading between the lines, interpreting silence like a hidden message? These are signs. It is not about blaming the other person. It is about stepping back and seeing the pattern. The silent guilt technique depends on you believing that silence equals judgment, that distance equals disapproval. But silence is not always about you, and not every coldness is your fault. You have a right to ask questions. To say, I feel something is off, can we talk about it? You have a right to protect your mental space when someone chooses to be vague instead of honest. And most importantly, you have a right to move freely in your truth, even if someone else remains quiet in theirs. This is not easy, especially when the other person is someone you love. You do not want to cause more pain. You do not want to seem cold. But standing up for your emotional clarity is not cruelty. It is courage. And it is necessary if you want relationships built on understanding instead of quiet confusion. The first step is learning to pause before taking blame. When you feel that familiar guilt rising without clear reason, stop. Ask yourself, do I really know what this is about? Has it been clearly communicated? Or am I assuming responsibility because I cannot stand the silence? Silence is not always a message, and guilt is not always truth. Your empathy is a gift, but it should not be used against you. You are allowed to care without sacrificing clarity. You are allowed to love without shrinking, and you are allowed to stop guessing and start asking. Now imagine the same quiet room, but this time you are older, maybe wiser. You have experienced this kind of tension before, the silence, the distant glances, the subtle signs that something is wrong, yet no words to explain it. You sit across from someone you care about, and you notice the feeling begin to rise, the uneasiness, the tightness in your chest, the instinct to fix whatever is wrong. But this time, instead of reacting, you pause. You ask yourself, what if this is not mine to carry? This is the beginning of your awareness. The moment you start to see the pattern not as personal failure, but as emotional programming. For years, you may have been conditioned to believe that maintaining peace is your responsibility. That if someone around you is uncomfortable, it is up to you to smooth the air. But peace that relies entirely on your guilt is not real peace. It is emotional management, and it slowly erodes your sense of self. The silent guilt technique works because it exploits this programming. It turns your sensitivity into a leash. It teaches you to walk into guilt before you are even invited. And each time you do, you reinforce the loop. The other person does not have to express anything clearly because you fill in the silence for them. You apologize without being asked. You offer explanations they never requested. You begin solving problems that were never spoken aloud. This is how guilt becomes your language. Not guilt for what you did, but guilt for how someone feels. The two are not the same, but the technique blurs the line. And the more blurred it becomes, the more lost you feel. Over time, your mind starts keeping score not of actions, but of emotions. Was he upset after I spoke? Did she go quiet after I said that? Did their tone shift? Did their reply come slower? Every small shift becomes a trigger, and every trigger leads to guilt. But this cycle can be broken, not by becoming cold, but by becoming conscious. You start by separating feelings from facts. You remind yourself that other people's silence is not a mirror of your failure. It is their choice, their mood, their journey. You do not need to fix what you did not break, and you certainly do not need to bleed just because someone else is hurting. Sometimes the person using the silent guilt technique does not know how to express their needs. They rely on silence because they fear confrontation. Or they learned somewhere along the way that guilt is more effective than honesty. But it is not your job to decode them. You are not a mind reader. You are a person with your own emotions, your own truths, and your own limits. This is where boundaries come in, not walls, but lines of clarity. When you begin to sense the pattern repeating, you can gently ask for openness. You can say, I feel something is off. If something is wrong, I am here to talk. And if not, I need to trust your silence as peace, not punishment. That small invitation returns the responsibility where it belongs. It gives the other person the chance to speak, or to own their quiet. And if they still choose silence, you must learn to let that silence stand without filling it with your guilt. You do not need to shrink in the face of vagueness. You do not need to rewrite your actions just because someone else will not explain theirs. You are allowed to be kind without being controlled. This shift will feel uncomfortable at first. The guilt may still come up like a reflex, but now you meet it with awareness. You ask it questions. Is this guilt based on truth, or is it based on someone else's refusal to speak? Has this been clearly communicated, or am I doing emotional labor that is not mine? And slowly, the grip weakens. The guilt begins to fade. You start standing in your center again, responding instead of reacting, not with defensiveness, but with self-respect. You stop apologizing for things you never agreed were wrong. You stop negotiating your worth just to win back their comfort. The person across from you may be surprised. They may test your boundary. They may become even quieter, hoping to pull you back into the old role. But you are no longer there. You are present, grounded, and aware. You do not resist their silence, but you do not surrender to it either. You let it exist without letting it define you. This is not distance. This is dignity. This is what it means to stay soft without losing yourself, to care deeply without collapsing, to love without sacrificing your clarity. Over time, something powerful happens. You begin to rebuild trust not just with others, but with yourself. You trust that you will not betray your truth to keep the peace. You trust that guilt will not control your actions. You trust that silence, when it appears, will no longer steal your confidence. And as that trust grows, so does your voice. You speak more freely. You feel more whole. You walk into conversations without fear, because now your peace is no longer tied to someone else's reactions. It is rooted in awareness, in honesty, in the simple, sacred, knowing that your presence does not have to shrink to keep others comfortable. You are not here to be a silent caretaker of other people's moods. You are here to be fully you, gentle, clear, open, and whole. Now imagine again the person across from you, the one whose silence used to pull you into guilt. You are still in the same room. The silence may still be there, but something is different. This time, it does not control you. You are not scanning their face for approval. You are not shrinking your words to avoid discomfort. You are simply sitting with yourself, present and whole. That shift, quiet but profound, is the final release from the silent guilt technique. Freedom from this technique does not mean you will never feel guilt again. It means guilt will no longer arrive uninvited. It means you will no longer be held hostage by what is not said. Because the most powerful response to emotional silence is not to speak louder. It is to stay still and stay honest. The mind loves to fill empty spaces with meaning. And when someone we care about goes silent, that space fills quickly. We imagine what they must be thinking. We create entire conversations in our heads. We walk through invisible accusations, rehearsing apologies for things we are not even sure we did. But now you know better. Now you can look at silence and leave it unfilled. You can say, that space belongs to them, not to my guilt. This shift is subtle, but life-changing. It creates breathing room inside your relationships. You no longer live in fear of upsetting someone simply by being yourself. You stop editing your emotions to protect theirs. You give up the role of emotional translator and return to the role of truth seeker. When guilt shows up now, you pause. You examine it. You ask, is this mine? Is this tied to my values or to their reaction? You learn that guilt is only useful when it leads to reflection and repair. But when it becomes a reflex, automatic, vague, and unexplained, it is no longer guidance, it is control. And you do not need to obey it. In healthy relationships, guilt is not used as a silent weapon. It is spoken, explored, resolved. There is room for discomfort, but there is also room for clarity. When someone feels hurt, they say so. When someone needs space, they explain why. There is no silence that punishes, no distance that demands. There is communication, not perfectly but openly. And if someone you love still chooses the silent method, you now have tools. You can name the silence kindly. You can set boundaries calmly. And most importantly, you can hold your center. You no longer collapse into guilt. You stand in understanding. You offer space, not submission. This power shows up in your posture, in the way you walk away from unclear blame, in the way you no longer chase after unspoken feelings, in the way you let others have their silence, while you keep your self-worth. This is not coldness. This is emotional maturity. You begin to see how much of your past energy was spent managing the feelings of others, not through love, but through fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being seen as selfish, fear of being the reason someone else shut down. But that fear has lost its grip, because now you know the truth. You are not responsible for every silence in the room. You are only responsible for your clarity, your kindness, and your truth. And truth is not always comfortable, but it is always clean. Guilt clouds the water, but truth clears it. It says, I will no longer carry pain that has not been shared. I will no longer offer apologies that were never asked for. I will not bend to keep the air light. I will breathe in it as it is. This change radiates beyond just one person. It shifts the way you live. You speak more honestly. You say no without guilt. You rest without explaining. You care for others without carrying what is not yours. You stop walking on emotional eggshells. You walk with quiet confidence instead. It also affects how you hold others. You no longer use silence as a tool. You do not withhold your feelings to get your way. You become the example of emotional clarity. When something is off, you say it. Not to hurt, but to heal. Not to blame, but to connect. Your relationships become clearer, cleaner. Less about guessing, more about growing. And in those rare moments when someone tries to pull you back into the old guilt game, you feel it instantly. But you do not fall. You recognize it like an old story, but you no longer live inside it. You listen, you breathe, you speak your truth, and you walk forward. This is what it means to step out of the silent guilt technique. It is not a battle. It is a gentle return to yourself. A quiet reclaiming of your emotional balance. You are still loving, still empathetic, but you are no longer guilt-driven. You are now guided by something deeper, self-awareness. And that awareness changes everything. It protects your peace. It deepens your love. It strengthens your voice. You no longer need to guess your way through connection. You can now build it with words, with presence, and with freedom. That is the real silence. Not the kind that punishes, but the kind that finally feels safe. The kind that holds space for both people to exist fully, without fear, without guilt, without distortion. A silence that speaks of understanding. A silence that comes only when the game is over and the truth stands quietly on its own. The social proof weapon. Picture this man standing at the entrance of two cafes. One is nearly empty. A few chairs, quiet music. No one is in line. The other cafe is packed. A line out the door. People laughing inside. The same menu. The same prices. But without thinking much, he joins the longer line. He tells himself the busy place must be better. Maybe the coffee is richer. Maybe the service is warmer. Or maybe it is just what everyone else chose. That single reason is enough. And so, he waits. This is the social proof weapon. The psychological pull to believe that if many people are doing something, it must be right. It must be good. It must be safe. On the surface, this seems logical. After all, if everyone is choosing the same thing, how bad can it be? But that instinct, when left unchecked, becomes a tool, a shortcut for decision-making that others can use to control you. Social proof is one of the most powerful forces in shaping behavior. We are social creatures. We learn by observing. As children, we copied gestures, expressions, and habits. We followed what others did to know what was acceptable. That learning never stops. In adulthood, it turns into something more subtle. We look for clues in the behavior of others to guide what we buy, what we believe, even how we live. This effect is amplified in unfamiliar situations. When you are uncertain, your brain seeks safety in numbers. If you are unsure about a product, but it has thousands of positive reviews, you are more likely to buy it. If you hear an idea that seems strange, but everyone in the room nods in agreement, you hesitate to question it. If a post online has thousands of likes, you are more likely to believe the content is meaningful, even if it is not. The problem is, numbers do not always equal truth. Popularity does not always mean value. Crowds are not always wise, and sometimes the illusion of agreement is created on purpose. Likes can be bought, reviews can be faked, testimonials can be scripted. Social proof becomes a weapon when it is used to push you toward a decision without you realizing it. Marketers know this. Politicians know this. Influencers know this. They highlight numbers. They show you how many others have joined, signed up, followed, or trusted them. They display success stories. They present consensus, and it works. Because your brain relaxes when it sees others doing the same thing. It feels safe to follow, even if the path is not right for you. But social proof is not just used commercially. It appears in your daily life, in your relationships, in your identity. You may feel pressure to dress a certain way because it is what your group does. You may silence your doubts during conversations because no one else seems to disagree. You may follow trends you do not truly care about because being different feels uncomfortable. This pressure is not loud. It is quiet. It whispers, blend in. Do not make things awkward. Trust the group. Go with the flow. And if you are not careful, it can strip you of your choices, of your voice, of your truth. To defend against the social proof weapon, you must first recognize it. Become aware of the moments you feel pulled by the crowd. Ask yourself, am I choosing this because it is right for me, or because others are choosing it? Do I trust this, or am I borrowing trust from someone else? That pause matters. It breaks the automatic loop. It puts space between stimulus and response. In that space, you can think. You can feel. You can return to your values. Learn to be comfortable with standing alone. That does not mean you always go against the crowd. It means you learn to check in with yourself before joining. You learn to trust your own experience, even if it differs from the group. You learn that popularity is not proof. It is just data. And data needs interpretation. You can also train yourself to resist manufactured proof. Do not let numbers be your guide without context. 1,000 positive reviews are meaningless if none speak to your actual needs. A viral post is not always valuable. A packed room does not always hold wisdom. Real insight often lives in quiet places, in unpopular voices, in overlooked paths. Surround yourself with people who value authenticity over approval. Create spaces where questions are welcome, where disagreement is not punished, where you are allowed to be uncertain without being pressured to conform. In those spaces, social proof loses its grip, and your mind becomes your own again. You can still appreciate community. You can still seek guidance, but let it be support, not substitution. Let others add perspective, not replace your own. Let the group show you possibilities, not push you into decisions. The social proof weapon is only dangerous when you forget you are holding your own mind. Once you remember, it loses power. You can look at the crowd and smile. You can appreciate the energy without surrendering to it. You can listen without obeying. And when you do, your choices become lighter, clearer, more honest. You stop chasing what is popular and start following what is true. You walk slower. You speak softer. But every step is yours. Every word is real. And that is how you reclaim yourself in a world built to pull you away. The anchoring effect. Picture this man walking into a quiet antique shop. He is not planning to buy anything expensive, just something small to decorate his desk. As he walks in, the first thing he sees is a large brass clock with a tag that reads $1,000. He walks past it and finds a smaller item, a carved wooden figure priced at $100. Without even thinking, he starts to feel like the smaller item is reasonably priced. He hesitates for a moment, then decides to buy it. What he does not realize is that the price of the first item he saw has quietly shaped his judgment. Not through logic, not through value, but through a mental shortcut called the anchoring effect. The anchoring effect is one of the mind's most subtle and powerful influences. It is the tendency to rely too heavily on the first piece of information we receive when making a decision. That first number, first idea, or first impression becomes an anchor. And even when we know it is not perfect, it still pulls our thoughts toward it. We adjust from it, but we rarely move far from it. It quietly shapes our expectations, our choices, and our beliefs. Imagine someone applying for a job. They are asked what salary they expect. They say $50,000, not because they have calculated their worth, but because someone once told them that was average for their role. That number sticks in their head like a magnet. Every offer they receive after that feels high or low, depending on that anchor. Not based on value, but based on the first number that entered their mind. This is not about being irrational. It is about being human. The brain is always trying to find shortcuts to save energy. When faced with uncertainty, it grabs the first thing that feels concrete and uses it as a starting point. That is the anchor. Even when we think we are being objective, we are often just adjusting slightly from the first thing we heard, saw, or felt. The anchoring effect appears everywhere. In pricing, negotiations, judgments, even relationships. A teacher's early impression of a student's ability can shape how they grade them later. A first impression of someone's confidence can color every interaction afterward. And once the anchor is set, it takes effort to break free from it. It becomes even more powerful when we do not realize it is happening. A product is shown as being 50% off, and we believe we are saving money. But the original price was never real. It was just an anchor, designed to make the new price feel better. In reality, we are being pulled by numbers, not guided by value. Think of a courtroom. A prosecutor suggests a harsh sentence even before the trial begins. That number sticks in the judge's mind. And even if the final sentence is less than suggested, it is still higher than it might have been if that number had never been mentioned. The anchor shifts the frame of reference. Or consider two people on a first date. One person shows up dressed sharply, speaks confidently, and shares stories of success. The other person, even without trying, begins to see them as impressive. Their future interactions are filtered through that initial image. It is not about who the person really is. It is about what was anchored first. The mind is easily influenced by sequence. The order in which information is received matters deeply. If we see something expensive first, everything after it feels cheaper. If we hear something positive first, even bad news feels lighter. The anchor creates the context, and context changes everything. So how do we protect ourselves from this quiet influence? The first step is to pause. When faced with a number, a story, or an impression that seems to shape your thinking instantly, take a breath. Ask yourself, is this the truth, or just the first thing I heard? Is this a fact, or just a frame? Awareness breaks the spell. Once you recognize the anchor, you can begin to move away from it. You can seek new information. You can question the source. You can remind yourself that your judgment does not have to begin where someone else's suggestion started. It is also important to set your own anchors. Before entering a negotiation, decide what your range is based on research, not emotion. Before forming an opinion, give yourself time to gather more than one perspective. The world is filled with people and systems that benefit when your mind follows their anchor, but you are not required to follow. You are allowed to step back and see the full picture. And perhaps the most powerful realization is this: you are not defined by your first thoughts. You can change your mind. You can move your focus. You can let go of the number that was planted in your mind and choose a new reference point. Anchors may arrive uninvited, but they do not have to stay. In daily life, this becomes a quiet strength. You walk into situations knowing that the first voice is not always the wisest. The first offer is not always the best. The first impression is not always complete. You learn to listen longer, to think wider, to question more gently. And in that space, your mind begins to breathe again. The anchoring effect does not need to control you. It can become a signal, a reminder to pause, to reflect, to reset. The anchor may appear, but it does not need to hold you down. You can observe it, thank it for showing you where your mind begins, and then choose where it should actually go. Because true clarity comes not from the first thing we see, but from what we are willing to look at next. The framing war. Imagine two people watching the same event. A man trips on the sidewalk, falls, and spills his coffee. One person laughs, saying he was careless and distracted. The other winces, thinking he must have had a rough morning. Same action, same moment. Two completely different meanings. What they saw was the same, but how they framed it changed everything. This is the beginning of the framing war, a silent conflict that does not happen in the streets or through shouts. It happens in the mind. It is the constant battle over how we interpret the world around us. And most of the time, we do not even realize it is happening. Framing is the story we wrap around facts. It is the lens we use to make sense of situations. A sentence, a memory, a headline, even a feeling, none of them mean anything until we decide what they mean. That decision, often made unconsciously, becomes our frame. And once the frame is set, everything inside it looks different. A job loss can be framed as a personal failure or as an opportunity to start fresh. A breakup can be framed as rejection or as a step toward alignment. A bad day can be framed as a curse or as a challenge. The facts do not change, but the emotional weight they carry shifts entirely depending on how we frame them. The framing war becomes dangerous when other people start doing the framing for you. The way news is presented, the way teachers describe success, the way parents explain struggle, the way society frames status, identity, worth. All these messages shape how you see the world and yourself. From a young age, you are handed frames. You are told what matters and what does not. What success looks like, what failure means, what beauty is, what power feels like, and often you accept these frames without question. Not because you believe them, but because you trust the people giving them to you. But there comes a moment when something inside starts to resist, when the frame no longer fits the picture, when the story you are telling yourself feels too small, too heavy, or too distorted. That is when the war begins, between the frame you were given and the truth you are starting to feel. This internal war is subtle. It does not arrive as a loud confrontation. It shows up as hesitation, as discomfort, as a quiet voice saying, "Maybe I do not believe this anymore." Maybe what they called weakness is actually sensitivity. Maybe what they called selfishness is actually self-respect. Maybe what they called failure is simply redirection. And once you begin to question the frame, your vision starts to clear. You begin to see how much of your life was not shaped by what happened, but by how you explained what happened to yourself. This does not mean facts do not matter. It means facts alone are not enough. Two people can live through the same event and carry entirely different stories about what it meant. One might grow. The other might shrink. The difference is the frame. In the framing war, the weapon is not truth. It is interpretation. And interpretation is powerful because it controls emotion. It controls reaction. It controls memory. A harsh comment from a stranger can be framed as an insult or as a reflection of their own pain. A missed opportunity can be framed as a lost chance or as divine timing. A childhood wound can be framed as lifelong damage or as the root of deep empathy. And that shift in perspective changes how you move forward. But here is the hard part. Framing is not something you do once. It is ongoing, a constant process. And if you are not doing it consciously, someone else is doing it for you. Advertising does it. Politics does it. Social media does it. Even the language people use to describe you becomes part of the frame. Were you called intense or passionate, stubborn or determined, weird or original? The words change the story. The story changes your self-image, and that self-image influences everything. To take back control in the framing war, you need to slow down the moment between stimulus and story. Catch yourself when you start framing. When something goes wrong, ask yourself, what frame am I putting around this? Is it helpful? Is it kind? Is it mine? This awareness creates space. In that space, you can reframe, not to lie to yourself, not to fake positivity, but to choose a lens that is rooted in strength, not shame, in clarity, not confusion. Picture this woman. She sits alone after a tough conversation with a friend. Her friend had distanced herself lately, and when they finally spoke, it was cold and brief. The woman feels a storm of thoughts rising. Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe she does not value me anymore. Maybe I care too much. She stares at her phone, waiting for a message that may never come. And as she waits, a frame begins to form around the entire moment. One that defines what this silence means. This is how framing works in real time. Not as an event, but as an interpretation. We do not respond to experiences. We respond to the meaning we assign them. And the more emotional the moment, the faster our mind rushes to fill in the blanks. But often that first frame is shaped by fear, or shame, or patterns from the past. That is why reframing is an act of emotional maturity. It requires patience. It requires space. It asks you to zoom out before you zoom in. To question the meaning before letting it settle. Think about how often people stay trapped in pain because of how something was framed. A breakup becomes proof that they are unlovable. A failure becomes evidence that they are not good enough. A single comment becomes a lifelong belief, not because it was true, but because it became the dominant frame. And once a frame hardens, it filters everything else. Every new experience passes through it. If you frame yourself as someone who always loses, then even when you win, you find a way to discredit it. If you frame yourself as someone who must earn love, then even kindness feels suspicious. This becomes a loop, a self-fulfilling lens. This is where the framing war becomes personal. It is not just about resisting outside influence. It is about challenging your inner narrator. That voice that rushes to label things. That voice that says, "This always happens to me," or "I will never get this right," or "I knew I should not have tried." That voice is not neutral. It carries old programming, old pain, old frames. To rewrite the story, you must first meet that voice with gentleness, not to silence it, but to slow it down. To ask, is this thought helpful? Is this frame empowering? Is there another way to see this? Reframing does not mean pretending things are good when they are not. It means choosing a perspective that allows growth instead of paralysis. It means shifting from victimhood to awareness, from stuck to evolving, from "this is the end" to "this is a turning point." Imagine if you practiced this daily. Every challenge becomes a question. Every setback becomes a lesson. Every difficult conversation becomes a mirror. You start to see your reactions not as weaknesses, but as clues. Your life becomes less about avoiding pain and more about understanding it. But this work is not easy. The framing war is old. You have been handed frames since you were a child. Some were built by your family, some by your culture, some by the way others treated you. And for a long time, you may not have had the language or the support to challenge them. That is why this part of the war feels lonely. You are not just changing your mind, you are changing your story. And stories are deeply tied to identity. When you shift the frame, you shift how you see yourself, and that can feel disorienting at first. You might even grieve the old frame. As painful as it was familiar. It gave you structure, predictability, something to hold on to. Letting it go means stepping into the unknown, into a new frame that may not yet feel stable. But that new frame is yours. You get to build it with intention, with clarity, with self-respect. You get to say, this moment does not define me. This mistake is not my identity. This feeling is not permanent. You get to place each new experience inside a story of becoming, not of breaking. This shift transforms everything. You begin to speak differently, to stand differently. You listen more closely to how others frame things, and you no longer absorb their fear as truth. You start offering new frames to the people you love. You say things like, maybe this is happening for you, not to you, or maybe this pause is a preparation. Your language becomes medicine. Your vision becomes a gift. Eventually, you reach a place where reframing is no longer a rescue tool. It becomes a way of life. You walk into uncertainty with trust. You meet resistance with curiosity. You see yourself not as someone trapped in circumstance, but as someone writing the meaning of it all. And as that clarity deepens, the war loses its noise. The enemy is no longer outside. The battlefield quiets. What remains is a practice, a daily choosing, a steady returning to the frame that holds your truth. Now picture this moment. You are alone, reflecting on something painful, maybe a rejection, a closed door, a misunderstanding. It is quiet, but your mind is loud. The story starts forming in the background like a storm cloud. You begin telling yourself the same things again. Maybe I am not good enough. Maybe it was my fault. Maybe it always ends this way. But this time, you stop. You notice the story taking shape. You see the frame trying to lock itself around the experience. You pause, you breathe, and you ask a different question. What if this is not about failure? What if this is about clarity? What if this is helping me, even if it does not feel like it? This is the heart of the framing war, learning to interrupt the automatic story, not to avoid truth, but to find a more honest one, a deeper one that holds both the pain and the possibility. Framing is never about denying what happened. It is about discovering what else is true. Because life is rarely one thing. Every ending carries a whisper of beginning. Every disappointment contains a lesson. Every mistake is a map, if you are willing to look closely. But the world around you does not always support this kind of thinking. It often teaches you to react quickly, to define everything in black and white, to label success and failure as opposites, to assume that discomfort means something is wrong. This makes framing harder, because the loudest voices are not always the wisest ones. You might hear people say things like, "This ruined me," or "I will never recover from that." And it is easy to join them, easy to adopt the frame of tragedy. But what if you took a quieter path? What if you said, "I am still becoming," or "I am learning how to carry this with strength"? That shift is small but powerful. It changes your posture. It changes how you speak to yourself. It gives you space to move again. The truth is, your frame shapes your future, not because it changes the facts, but because it changes what you notice, what you expect, what you allow. A narrow frame keeps you focused on limits. A wider frame helps you see options. A kind frame gives you permission to rest, to heal, to begin again. So how do you keep building better frames? Start with language. The words you use are the edges of the frame. Are you saying always and never too often? Are you using words like failure or broken without pausing to define them? Replace them with softer ones. Words like learning, adjusting, rebuilding, understanding. You do not need to sugarcoat reality, but you also do not need to stab yourself with every sentence. Then, look at patterns. What kinds of frames do you default to? Do you always blame yourself? Do you expect things to go wrong? Do you believe people will leave? These patterns are not personal flaws. They are old protections. They were formed when you needed them, but now you can update them. Try this. When something difficult happens, before reacting, write down 3 ways to frame it. One that comes automatically, one that feels neutral, and one that feels kind. You do not have to believe the kindest one yet. Just sit with it. Let it exist. Over time, your brain will learn that it has options, that not every story needs to end the same way. Also, surround yourself with people who reflect better frames back to you. People who can hold space for your struggle, but still remind you of your strength. People who do not rush to fix you, but help you reframe without force. These people are rare, but they are gold. And you can be that person for others too. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say to someone is, maybe there is more to this than you think. Not as advice, but as a soft invitation. A reminder that their current frame is not the final one, because the framing war is not won by being right. It is won by being awake. Awake to the ways you shape meaning. Awake to the ways others try to shape it for you. Awake to the gentle power of choice. In that awareness, you find peace. Not because life gets easier, but because you stop being at the mercy of every twist in the story. You become the narrator. You decide how the story is told. And maybe that is the real secret. Life is not about control. It is about interpretation. You cannot stop the wind, but you can adjust the sails. You cannot stop the losses, but you can shape what they leave behind. You cannot erase the past, but you can choose the frame you place around it. And when you do, everything shifts. The storm becomes a teacher. The silence becomes sacred. The struggle becomes a sculpture. You walk through the world with a new kind of strength. Not loud, not flashy, but deep, calm, present. Because you know that no matter what happens, you can choose how to see it. You can choose what it means. You can choose what comes next. And that is not just power. That is freedom. That is clarity. That is peace. The framing war will never fully end. But you are no longer unarmed. You are no longer lost in someone else's version of the story. You are here. You are steady. And you are writing your own meaning, one moment at a time. The storytelling manipulation hack. Imagine someone stands before a crowd with nothing but a microphone and a smile. They begin to speak, but they do not give facts or numbers. They do not list reasons. Instead, they tell a story. A boy walking alone through a storm, a mother waiting by the window, a stranger offering help. The room grows still. People lean in, eyes soften, hearts open. The story is not theirs, but it feels personal. And by the time the storyteller finishes, people are nodding in agreement. Not because they have analyzed anything, but because they have felt something. That is the power of the storytelling manipulation hack. Humans are wired for story. Long before we had textbooks or statistics, we had campfires and voices. We used stories to teach, to warn, to inspire, and to remember. But stories are not just tools for learning, they are also tools for persuasion. When used with awareness, they can awaken truth. But when used with intent to control, they can twist perception quietly and deeply. The trick lies in how stories bypass our logic. When someone presents a statement or argument, we naturally question it. We look for gaps. We want proof. But a story disarms that instinct. It is not asking to be judged, it is asking to be felt. And once we begin feeling, we stop thinking critically. Picture this. A politician does not list policies. They tell you about their father who worked 2 jobs, about their neighbor who could not afford medicine. They paint scenes, moments, struggles. And without realizing, you begin to believe they understand. You begin to trust, not because of what they will do, but because of how their story made you feel. This is not always manipulation. Storytelling can be honest. It can be healing. But when it is used to guide you away from questioning, to push you toward a decision you would not have made otherwise, it crosses into something else. It becomes a subtle form of control, a beautiful disguise for influence. The mind does not just hear a story, it enters it. It fills in the details. It creates pictures. And those pictures become memories, stronger sometimes than real memories, because stories are sticky. They stay with you. You might forget a number or a rule, but a story you felt deeply can stay in your mind for years. This stickiness makes them powerful weapons in the hands of those who understand how to use them. Advertisers know this. They do not show you the specs of a product. They show you a child smiling, a family laughing, a lonely person finally feeling seen. They build a world around the product, a feeling, and you begin to associate that product with the feeling, even if the product itself has nothing to do with it. The same thing happens in social spaces. A post goes viral not because it is factual, but because it tells a compelling story. One person's experience, shared with emotion, can shift public opinion more than 100 facts, and once people feel something, they are less likely to change their minds. Even if the story turns out to be untrue, this is the heart of the manipulation. It does not need to lie outright. It only needs to tell a story that feels true. Once the story has entered your emotions, the rest follows easily. Your decisions, your beliefs, your allegiances, they begin to tilt, slowly and silently. Sometimes, the person telling the story is not even aware of the influence they hold. They are simply sharing what they know. But other times, the story is shaped deliberately, crafted to hit certain emotions, structured to lead to a conclusion. That is where the line is crossed. That is where the story becomes a tool, not for connection, but for persuasion without consent. The mind, once moved emotionally, becomes loyal. It defends what it believes it has felt. And anyone who questions the story can feel like an enemy. That is the danger. Stories, once rooted deeply, can make people ignore evidence. They can divide. They can turn dialogue into defense. So how do we protect ourselves from this quiet force? Not by avoiding stories, but by learning to listen with awareness. When a story moves you, pause and ask, what is this story trying to make me feel? And what is it asking me to believe as a result? Does the emotion match the message? Or is the feeling being used to guide me past the facts? It does not mean you shut off empathy. It means you pair empathy with curiosity. You hold both the feeling and the question. You listen, but you also reflect. You allow the story to touch you, but you also ask, what is not being said here? What is this story not showing? The most powerful defense against the storytelling manipulation hack is not resistance, it is awareness. When you know that stories can be used to lead your emotions, you begin to walk more gently through them. You begin to see the structure beneath the surface, the hooks, the pacing, the pause before the climax. You begin to notice how your body responds, and in that noticing, you create space. Space is where clarity lives. It is where you can hold the beauty of the story without being owned by it. It is where you can admire the storyteller without surrendering your own voice. Because your story matters too, and no single story should be allowed to erase your thinking. This awareness makes you slower to judge, but quicker to understand. You become less reactive, more reflective. You stop being swept away by the first emotional wave, and instead, you stand calmly, letting the story pass through you, not control you. Now imagine you are walking through a museum. Each room has its own story. One tells of bravery in the face of war, another of loss in the silence after disaster, another of unity built from generations of struggle. As you move from one room to another, you begin to notice something. Each room makes you feel something different, not just because of the events it describes, but because of how those events are framed. The lighting, the words on the wall, the music in the background, all of it gently guiding how you experience the story. And that is when you realize the way a story is told shapes how it lives in your mind. This is exactly how the storytelling manipulation hack works in real life. It is not just the story that matters, it is the delivery, the timing, the tone, the space between sentences, the pauses that make you lean in, the emotional words placed in just the right order. Storytelling becomes more than sharing. It becomes architecture. It builds a reality around you. And if you do not recognize that construction, you can live in someone else's design without knowing it. People often mistake emotional truth for actual truth. When something feels real, it becomes hard to question. If a story makes you cry, you assume it must be honest. If it makes you angry, you assume there must be injustice. If it makes you proud, you believe the story carries goodness. But emotions are not proof. They are reactions. They tell us what we value, what we care about, but they do not tell us what is fact. This is why storytelling is such a powerful tool in the hands of leaders, influencers, and even advertisers. They do not always need to tell you what to think. They only need to tell you what to feel. Once they have done that, your thoughts will often follow, not because they were forced, but because they were gently shaped by emotion. And emotion has a way of sticking. Long after the story is over, the feeling lingers. That is why stories can change opinions faster than reason. A personal story of someone overcoming hardship can change how we see a whole group of people. A story of betrayal can shape how we view an entire system. One story, well told, can feel more real than 10 pages of statistics. That is not a flaw. That is how the human mind works. But it is also why we need to be more careful. Because not all storytellers are harmless. Some know exactly what they are doing. They know how to pace a story, how to use silence, how to build trust by making themselves look vulnerable. They use their own emotions as a bridge into your heart. And once they are there, they begin to influence what you see as true. It is important to say that not every storyteller is trying to manipulate. Some truly believe in what they are sharing. They are not trying to mislead. They are trying to connect. But that does not change the fact that stories can be used to bypass your thinking. And that is where the risk lies, in the feeling that something must be true just because it feels close to you. Think about the stories that have shaped your view of the world. Were they balanced? Did they offer different sides? Or did they only give one perspective, wrapped in emotional weight? And once they reached you, did you ever question them? Or did they settle into your beliefs quietly, becoming part of how you see people, places, and problems? This is how bias is born, not just through information, but through repetition of one kind of story. If you are only ever told about danger from one group, that becomes your truth. If you are only ever shown success from a single lifestyle, that becomes your ideal. If you are only ever given the victim's perspective from one side, then the villain becomes obvious even if the full picture was never shown. That is the art of storytelling when it is used to manipulate. It does not lie directly. It simply edits. It selects which parts to show and which to leave out. It highlights the pain in one direction and hides it in the other. It makes one side human and the other side distant. And over time, that imbalance creates a belief that feels completely natural, even though it was crafted carefully from partial truth. So how do we guard ourselves from this? Not by rejecting all stories, but by becoming better listeners. By asking gentle questions as we listen. What part of this story moves me? What part is missing? Whose voice is not being heard here? Why was this story told now in this way? When you hear a story, especially one that makes you feel strongly, pause before you react. Feel the emotion, but do not let it become instruction. Let it guide your heart, but not replace your mind. Be willing to hold a feeling without letting it become your belief right away. And when someone tells you a story that seems too perfect, too emotional, too clearly aligned with their goals, step back. Ask yourself, is this story helping me see something new? Or is it pushing me toward a decision? Is it making space for thought? Or is it trying to replace it? This does not make you cold. It makes you clear. You can still be moved. You can still be inspired. But you become selective with what you absorb. You become a conscious participant, not just an emotional passenger. And that is where your strength grows. Because the real power is not in avoiding stories. It is in mastering how to walk through them without losing yourself. It is in knowing that just because a story made you feel something does not mean you owe it your agreement. You are allowed to feel deeply and still think clearly. Now imagine this. You are listening to someone share a story in a room full of people. It is powerful. It is emotional. You feel your chest tighten at certain moments. Your mind paints images with every sentence. You almost forget where you are. But somewhere in the back of your awareness, another voice rises. A quieter one. It does not push the story away. It simply asks, why this story? Why now? And what is it asking me to believe? That voice is your awareness. It is the part of you that remains rooted while everything else is being pulled. And that awareness is what frees you from the hidden pull of the storytelling manipulation hack. Because stories are not just told to entertain. They are told to shape perception. They guide thoughts without appearing to. They change behaviors without needing to argue. That is why they are powerful. But power, when unnoticed, becomes dangerous. The final part of this understanding is not just to recognize stories that manipulate, it is to understand how we can fall into using them ourselves. Sometimes we share stories to prove a point. Sometimes to win someone over. Sometimes to soften the truth or bend the response in our favor. And when we do that, we too begin to shape a version of reality that may not be complete. There is a fine line between influence and manipulation. Influence invites someone into your truth. Manipulation tries to guide them without their consent. The difference lies in your intent. Are you sharing to open a conversation or to close it down? Are you inviting reflection or avoiding it? We all carry stories. Some are true, some are filtered, and some have grown over time into myths that feel more comfortable than the facts. It is easy to believe a version of your past that makes you the hero, or the victim, or the savior. Because we all want to be seen in a way that fits our identity. But when we use those stories to control how others see us, we begin to drift from honesty. The most powerful stories are not the ones that make you feel good. They are the ones that make you pause, that invite questions, that leave room for reflection, that say, this is how it felt to me, but it may not be the whole picture. These stories respect the mind of the listener. They do not rush to a conclusion. They unfold slowly, letting the listener arrive on their own. So if you want to protect yourself from the storytelling manipulation hack, learn to listen without attachment. Let stories pass through you. Let them move you, but also let them go. Do not let any single story become your only frame, because the world is wide and truth is not found in a single path. It is found where stories overlap, where emotions are balanced by clarity, and where meaning is discovered, not handed to you. You are allowed to feel something deeply and still say, I need to know more. You are allowed to respect someone's experience without making it your belief. You are allowed to pause, even when everyone else is clapping. That pause is your power. It gives you the space to choose instead of follow. And in your own life, be careful with the stories you tell. Not because stories are dangerous, but because they are strong. They can build bridges or build walls. They can bring healing, or they can cause confusion. When you speak your truth, speak it fully, but also speak it with care. Let your stories invite others in, not corner them into agreement. We are all made of stories. But we are not just the stories we hear, we are also the stories we question, the ones we rewrite, the ones we outgrow, and the ones we choose to believe after we have seen the full picture. So next time someone tells you a story, whether it is a friend, a leader, a brand, or even your own mind, listen. Let yourself be moved, but also step back and ask, what is this story trying to do? And do I want to go where it is leading? Because you are not just a listener, you are a thinker. You are not just an audience, you are an author. And the most important story you will ever tell is the one you tell yourself about what is real, what is right, and what is yours to believe. That story, when chosen with care, becomes your anchor in a world full of voices. And in that anchor, you find freedom. The fear of missing out game. Imagine sitting in a quiet room, feeling fine, feeling present. You are relaxed, your breath is steady, and nothing feels particularly urgent. Then, a notification lights up your screen. A friend has posted photos from a party you were not invited to. Another message shows someone traveling to a place you have always wanted to see. A video plays of strangers dancing, smiling, living a life that looks somehow more exciting than yours. And just like that, the peace disappears, replaced by a flicker of restlessness. A voice inside whispers, "You should have been there. You are falling behind. You are missing out." This is the fear of missing out. Quiet at first, but heavy as it grows. It starts as curiosity and ends in anxiety, and in today's world, it is not a rare feeling. It is a constant background hum, always waiting to be triggered. It is the pressure to be everywhere. To be doing everything. To not just live, but to be seen living in the right way. FOMO, as most call it, is not just about events or opportunities. It is about identity. About the belief that our value is measured by how full our life looks. The more packed your schedule, the more interesting your feed, the more adventurous your stories, the more valid your existence feels. Or at least, that is what the game tells you. The fear of missing out game is not a conscious choice. No one wakes up and decides to play. It is a system that pulls you in, slowly. It rewards you with attention, but it taxes your peace. It tells you that rest is laziness, that stillness is waste, and that being content with what you have means you are not aiming high enough. It works because it plays on an ancient instinct. Humans are wired to want inclusion. In tribal times, being left out was dangerous. Belonging meant survival. Rejection meant risk. That part of our brain still operates. It still lights up when we see a group forming without us. It still aches when we feel excluded. The only difference now is that the tribe is digital, and it never sleeps. Every scroll is a reminder of what you are not doing. Every story is a window into someone else's highlight reel. And it is easy to forget that what you see is not the whole picture. You see the trip, not the loneliness after. You see the celebration, not the doubt in the days before. You see the success, not the fear behind it. But the game does not reward that kind of reflection. It rewards motion. It rewards participation. It says, you better get in before it is too late. And so, people move. They sign up for things they do not care about. They say yes to invitations out of obligation. They chase moments not because they are meaningful, but because they do not want to be the one who stayed behind. And in chasing everything, they begin to lose connection with what they actually want. This is the trap. When you play the fear of missing out game for too long, you stop hearing your own voice. You lose the ability to sit with yourself without checking what the world is doing. You forget how to enjoy your own company unless it is being validated from the outside. And that disconnection starts to feel normal. But you were not built to live through a lens of comparison. You were not designed to experience life only through secondhand stories. You are not meant to spend every moment wondering if someone else is living a better version of your life. Because the truth is, you cannot miss what is not yours, and chasing everything does not bring fullness. It brings fatigue. Still, knowing this is not enough. The pull is strong. Even when you are aware of it, it finds new ways to reach you. That is why the fear of missing out has become a game. Because it is repetitive. It has rounds. It resets each time you open a screen. And the more you play, the harder it is to walk away. The first step in leaving the game is learning how to notice when you are being pulled. Pause when the feeling shows up, that tiny spark of unease, that thought that says, everyone else is doing more. Ask yourself, what exactly am I afraid of missing? Is it the experience itself, or the image of having had it? Is it connection, or is it approval? Most of the time, it is not the event you crave. It is the feeling of belonging. The fear is not missing the moment, but being forgotten by the world, being unseen, being irrelevant. And that fear runs deep, but it can be softened. Start with presence. When you are doing something simple, like reading or resting or just sitting in silence, notice how quickly your mind reaches for distraction. That reach is often the first move in the FOMO game. Gently bring it back. Practice staying with yourself. Practice finding depth in small things. Then, begin asking what matters to you. Not what is popular, not what gets the most likes, but what actually feels good, what gives you peace, what makes you feel rooted, not excited for a moment, but aligned for a while. Because that kind of fulfillment is quiet. It does not shout, it does not sparkle, but it stays. It grows slowly, and it does not depend on anyone else watching. You will still feel the pull sometimes. That is natural. The game is designed to be tempting, but the more you notice it, the less power it has. And over time, you will start choosing different paths. Not out of fear, but from clarity. Not to catch up, but to come home to yourself. Picture this girl sitting at a cafe, sipping coffee alone. Her phone lies face up on the table, silent for now. She's watching people walk past the window, some laughing, some on calls, some clearly in a rush. She opens her phone just to check the time, but within seconds, she is scrolling. A friend is in Paris. Another one is at a music festival. Someone else just bought a new car. As she scrolls, her peaceful moment starts to fade. Her coffee feels colder, her afternoon less meaningful, her day suddenly too quiet. Not because anything changed, but because she entered the game. This is how the fear of missing out sneaks in. It doesn't crash through the door. It whispers. It shows you everything you are not doing. And in doing so, it makes you forget everything you are already experiencing. The fear grows from a human need to belong, to be included, to not be left behind. But once it gets into your mind, it begins to change how you choose. Not from alignment, but from reaction. It's the reason you say yes to plans you are not excited about. It's why you feel anxious when others are together without you. It's why you keep checking your phone during quiet moments, as if the next thing you see might prove your life is missing something. And what happens next is subtle. You begin to question your path. You start comparing your journey to everyone else's, not based on what you want, but based on what they seem to be doing. This is when you stop living your own story and start chasing someone else's script. You see someone starting a business and feel like you should be doing more. You see someone married and think maybe you're behind. You see someone living abroad and wonder if you made the wrong choice staying home. Even if you were content before, now your peace feels fragile. You start to measure your life not by how it feels to you, but by how it looks compared to others. And the most dangerous part is this. You don't even know the full story behind what you're seeing. You see the polished photo, not the tears behind it. You see the highlight, not the process. You see the joy, not the loneliness that might be sitting quietly beside it. And you forget that most people are also playing the same game, posting, sharing, performing, not always because they're happy, but because they don't want to seem like they're missing out either. So what do we do when the game starts to blur the line between truth and illusion? The answer begins with honesty. We need to be honest about what we truly value, and that requires turning inward, away from the noise, away from the scroll, back into the body, back into the moment. Ask yourself this: when was the last time you made a decision purely from your own clarity, not from pressure, not from comparison, not from fear? That kind of clarity is quiet. It does not beg for attention. But it is strong. It is steady. And you only find it when you give yourself permission to step out of the race, to pause, to ask, what do I really want? Not what looks exciting, not what looks impressive, but what feels like home in my chest, what brings peace, not just pleasure. Because pleasure is quick, and it often fades fast, but peace stays longer. It builds something deeper. When you choose from peace, the fear of missing out loses its grip. You no longer panic when others are doing things you are not. You trust that your path has its own rhythm. You no longer measure your success by how visible it is. You start to feel whole, even in silence, even in stillness. Of course, this doesn't mean you never feel the fear again. The game is built to repeat. It shows up in small ways. A message from someone who didn't include you. A photo that triggers something you didn't know you were missing. A sudden question, am I doing enough? But instead of rushing to prove something, you can pause. You can say to yourself, it's okay to feel this, but I do not have to act from it. I can notice it and return to what matters. And slowly, the patterns shift. You start protecting your time. You say no more, often not from guilt, but from wisdom. You become more careful with your energy. You stop trying to be everywhere and start being fully where you are. And what's more surprising is this. The more grounded you become, the more meaningful your experiences feel, if they are simple. Sitting alone with a book becomes rich. Taking a walk without music becomes restful. Having a slow day becomes beautiful. Not because it is glamorous, but because it is yours. Chosen, fully lived. This is the beginning of breaking the game, not by avoiding life, but by redefining what it means to live fully. Not by rejecting joy, but by choosing joy that is aligned with your soul, not just your screen. And when you start living this way, you become someone others look on it for trends, but for truth. Not because your life looks perfect, but because it feels real, grounded, free. FOMO loses power not because the world becomes quieter, but because you learn how to quiet the noise inside. You start to understand that missing out is not always a loss. Sometimes it is a choice. Sometimes it is a protection. Sometimes it is the space you need to grow without pressure. You begin to trust that not every path is yours to take. Not every moment is meant to be shared. Not every room needs your presence, and that understanding becomes peace. A peace that no scroll, no update, no highlight reel can take away. Now imagine a boy sitting in his room late at night. He is tired, but he cannot sleep. He scrolls endlessly through stories, reels, updates. His mind jumps from place to place, someone's concert, someone's late-night meal, someone's success announcement. He is not really interested in any of it, but something in him won't let the phone go. As if the next swipe might finally show him something that makes him feel complete. He knows he needs rest, but he feels like resting would mean falling behind, like peace would cost him relevance. So he stays awake, chasing nothing. This is the deeper layer of the fear of missing out. It is no longer about wanting to be part of something. It becomes about fearing invisibility, about not just missing out on moments, but on meaning itself. This fear doesn't just pull you toward events, it pulls you away from your own life, from your sleep, from your focus, from your presence. It convinces you that the answers are out there. That fulfillment is waiting in the next update. That happiness comes with knowing what everyone else is doing. And while you're busy looking out, you stop noticing what's within. That's what makes this game so heavy. It trains your brain to expect that the next moment will be better than this one. That the next thing will be more valuable than what is already in your hands. So you stop savoring. You stop appreciating. Even joy starts to feel rushed. Even calm feels suspicious. But here's the truth. FOMO is not always a lie. Sometimes you will miss things. Sometimes people will gather without you. Sometimes doors will open that you are not meant to walk through. And that is okay. That is part of being human. You are not supposed to have every experience. You are not supposed to be in every conversation. Life becomes beautiful not by cramming in everything, but by choosing what matters and letting go of what does not. That choice, though, takes strength. Because saying no in a world that constantly pushes yes feels risky. Choosing solitude in a culture that praises performance can feel like isolation, but it is not. It is a return to self, a return to rhythm. And rhythm matters. Not everyone is meant to bloom at the same time. Not everyone is meant to take the same path. The game of missing out creates the illusion that life is a competition of moments, that the fastest, loudest, and most visible wins. But the deepest growth often happens in quiet, unseen places. You do not see the seed learning how to split open. You do not see the roots pushing gently into the soil. That part of life is slow, messy, invisible, but it is real, and it is enough. So when the fear shows up, let it visit, let it speak, but do not give it the steering wheel. Let it pass through like a breeze. You are allowed to acknowledge it without obeying it. You are allowed to say, yes, I see what they are doing, and I still choose to stay where I am, because where you are right now has value. The quiet choices, the small joys, the simple commitments. They may not trend, but they build something that lasts. When you live from presence instead of pressure, you stop chasing everything and start noticing what has been with you all along. You remember how to enjoy a slow conversation, how to walk without rushing, how to eat without distraction, how to wake up without dread. You remember how to live, not as a reaction to others, but as a reflection of your own soul. The fear of missing out may still come. It may knock at your door in moments of doubt, but you will meet it differently. You will not see it as an enemy, but as a reminder to come home, to ask, am I moving from fear or from fullness? Am I chasing the crowd or choosing my own direction? And even when you do say yes to something exciting, you will know the difference. You will say yes from desire, not from anxiety. You will join not because you fear being left out, but because it speaks to something real inside you. That is the shift. From reacting to choosing, from proving to being, from scattered attention to rooted presence. You are not here to collect moments just to be seen. You are here to experience them deeply, even if no one else notices. And that, quietly, is freedom. Imagine someone standing at a fork in the road. To the left is the loud path. It's filled with lights, updates, celebration, movement. Everyone seems to be going that way. It's fast, full, and always changing. To the right is the quiet path. Still, simple. No applause, no rush. Just space, just breath. And this person stands frozen between the two, not because they don't know what they want, but because they fear what they'll miss if they choose the wrong one. This is what FOMO does over time. It traps you between wanting presence and fearing loss, between what feels good in your soul and what looks good from the outside. It convinces you that every choice means giving up something better, that every quiet moment carries hidden regret. So instead of choosing fully, you hesitate. You dip in and out of your own life, never staying long enough to feel whole. And that hesitation slowly eats away at trust. Not in the world, but in yourself. You stop trusting your own judgment. You second-guess even your calmest moments. Was that vacation enough? Was staying home a mistake? Should I have spoken up? Should I have gone? FOMO doesn't just make you fear missing events. It makes you fear missing a version of yourself. A version that's always in the right place, always achieving, always seen. But that version isn't real. It's stitched together from the best moments of everyone else. It is a fantasion that you are punished for not living up to. And so, the game continues. You keep chasing experiences, hoping one of them will silence the noise. You post more. You do more. You scroll more. But it never settles. Because what you're trying to satisfy isn't a hunger for experiences. It's a longing for enoughness. A desire to feel like your life, as it is okay. That you are okay. And that feeling cannot come from what you see outside. It can only come from what you accept inside. That's why the cure to FOMO is not more activity. It is more depth. Not more doing, but more being. Not more moments, but more meaning within the ones you already have. Start by looking at what you're chasing. Ask yourself gently, is this something I truly want, or something I feel I should want? If no one else was doing it, would I still care? If there was no one to impress, would I still move this way? These questions are not meant to judge you. They're meant to bring you back. Because so often, FOMO is a sign that you've drifted away from your inner compass, away from your quiet yes. The more you live in that drift, the more you look outside for direction. But your life doesn't need to look like anyone else's to be rich. Your joy doesn't need to be proven to be real. Your growth doesn't need to be posted to be valid. Sometimes the most beautiful parts of your journey will be invisible to everyone but you. And that's okay. The goal is not to stop living. It's to stop living for the scoreboard, to stop making choices because they look good in a caption, to stop letting urgency replace purpose. There's a rhythm your life is trying to follow. A quiet pull that doesn't ask you to rush or compare. It asks you to listen, to feel, to come back to what matters. When you start living from that place, something inside you starts to soften. You're less drawn to every invitation. You're less shaken by someone else's highlight. You stop needing to be everywhere because you finally arrived in your own life. And that life may be slower. It may be quieter. It may not get applause. But it will feel true. It will feel like yours. You'll begin to make peace with the idea that you can miss out on some things and still live fully. That some opportunities are not for you. That some rooms are not meant to hold you. And that doesn't make your life smaller, it makes it more honest. Letting go of FOMO is not about cutting off the world. It's about reconnecting with your own. It's about remembering that presence is not just being somewhere, it's being you, wherever you are. Even when it feels like everyone else is moving faster, even when the noise is louder than usual, you can still return. To breath, to stillness, to trust. The fear of missing out will visit again and again. But each time it does, you'll be a little more ready, a little more rooted, a little more able to say, I may not be everywhere, but I am right where I need to be. Now imagine waking up one morning and choosing not to reach for your phone. The world is still spinning. People are still posting. Stories are still being shared. But for a while, none of it is in your hands. You sit by the window, just watching the sky shift its color. You make tea. You breathe. Nothing dramatic happens. Yet in that stillness, you begin to notice something returning. A quiet rhythm. A calm voice. A sense of enough. This is what happens when you stop playing the fear of missing out game. When you no longer measure the value of your time based on someone else's timeline. When you stop treating life like a race and begin to walk it like a Python that doesn't have to look like anyone else's to be meaningful. The final trick of FOMO is convincing you that stillness is a kind of failure. That by slowing down you are falling behind. That if you are not constantly moving, achieving, upgrading, you are losing the game. But what if there is no game? What if the race itself was imagined? What if the moment you step out of that loop you are no longer behind, you are finally free? That's the truth that takes the longest to land. Because we've been taught to believe that more is always better. More experiences, more connections, more visibility. But more is not always meaningful. Sometimes more creates noise, and sometimes less brings depth. The fear of missing out will always find something to show you. Another success, another trend, another celebration. But real joy does not come from catching up. It comes from arriving fully, completely, without needing to be seen. And here's the quiet secret most people never say out loud: everyone is missing something. Always. It is impossible not to. While you are reading this, something is happening somewhere that you are not a part of. While you are choosing one thing, you are automatically not choosing another. And that's okay. Life is not about having it all. Life is about choosing what matters to you and letting the rest go. The fear becomes gentler when you stop resisting it. When you say to yourself, yes, I am missing out on that, but I am present for this moment, this breath, this tiny act of living that no one else can live for me, that presence turns into peace. And peace doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't need to be posted. It doesn't sparkle on the surface. But it's deep, it's soft, it stays. This doesn't mean you won't want adventure or excitement. It doesn't mean you never join the party, never travel, never chase a dream. It means when you do, you're doing it from wholeness, not from fear, from alignment, not from anxiety. You are choosing because it's right for you, not because you are afraid of being left out. The fear of missing out often fades the moment you start listening to what you're actually missing in yourself. Not the experiences, but the connection. Not the events, but the meaning. The longing is not really for more moments. It is for moments that feel real. And those moments aren't rare. They're everywhere. They're in the way sunlight spills through your room in the early morning, in the sound of your own footsteps on a quiet walk, in the way your chest rises and falls when you sit still, in a conversation where someone really sees you, in a memory that comes out of nowhere and makes you smile without reason. None of those moments need to be announced. They just need to be felt. When you let go of the fear, something strange happens. You begin to feel full again, not because life became more exciting, but because you finally stopped running. You finally stopped looking over your shoulder. You stopped asking, what am I missing? And started asking, what do I already have? That shift rewrites everything. It helps you enjoy what others are doing without comparing it to your own life. You can celebrate them without questioning yourself. You can feel happy for someone else's joy without feeling smaller, because their light is not a threat to your path. Their story is not a judgment on yours. There's a kind of peace that grows when you realize you do not need to be in every room to be valuable. You do not need to know every answer to be wise. You do not need to be everywhere to belong. You only need to be fully here, wherever that may be. And that is how the game finally ends. Not with a dramatic conclusion, not with a perfect life, but with a quiet choice. The choice to live from the inside out, to build a life that feels good, even if it doesn't always look impressive, to show up for yourself in ways no one else can see, to miss out on some things so you can truly experience others, because the truth is, you are not missing out on your life. You are living it, moment by moment. And the more you trust that, the more beautiful those moments become. So when the fear knocks again, as it will, let it knock, let it pass. Smile at it gently and say, I'm not playing today. You have better things to do, like living the life you've already chosen, fully, slowly, presently. And that, in the end, is the most you will ever need. And that's it. Hope you're in peace. Just consider subscribing, because sleep matters. Just then, stress scatters and nothing else matters. Peace out.